All right, show the book, Cameron.
Hidden
Yeah.
Hand. It's called Hidden Hand.
Expose.
Exposing exposing how the Chinese Communist Party is reshaping the world.
Oh
And
shoot.
it is really fascinating, this book. And because like a lot of things we've been talking about and that we're starting to see and observe, it's explaining all of that. I mean, you can see it firsthand, and then you read this, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But one of the things, it's like they have one of the things that was really interesting is they're explaining how a lot of their companies in China, and then also even like international companies that go in there, foreign companies, they have, I forget the word they use, like a division or a part of their company that's basically like the Communist Party. It's like they have their own section in the company. And so it's like they can kind of
They have
keep
like
an eye on
they have like
everybody and like
HR, accounting, and then like
yeah, I don't know exactly how it
like
works.
that,
They're
like
just saying that it's like everyone has this part of it. So it's like they can sort of keep tabs on everything and see if they're doing anything that would be against like the Communist Party's wishes or
wow.
whatever, and so but they also talk about and I'm only like 3 chapters
It's like
in.
the IRS on the next level. Like how Ed Foreman tells that story. Like when his companies grew fast, he had like the IRS basically in
In
his
his
office.
yeah.
But
Just
this
to
is
like
like
keep
permanent
everything
everywhere,
right.
though.
And it was talking about also how they have programs where they keep an eye on up and coming politicians that will eventually be in the main stage. And like that whole thing with Eric Swalwell, apparently the Chinese were like engaged with him and everything, even when he was like a city council member and shit. So I was like, oh shit, like that we've literally seen that occur, right? Because then it was exposed he was like having a relationship with this Chinese spy this whole time and everything, this whole thing came out, right? So,
Hang on. This all clicked for me. 4 years ago, when I was working with Gerard Adams, and I was like his right hand man, and he's building his brand. He's like got a YouTube page, Instagram. He was like, like the cool guy that every young entrepreneur wanted to be like. Fucking Eric Swalwell's office multiple times reaching out. Hey, how do we get on Gerard's calendar? Hey, he was like, I don't know if that was when he got up to Congress, but it was like in that thing. So I was like, where is this name from? And then I see him the other day on TV wearing his freaking mask, not around anybody. I'm like, who is this fucking guy?
But it was just it's fascinating because it shows how they it's like they're infiltrating everything, and part of what they do is to get everybody in other countries and politicians and people in media to feel sympathetic towards the Chinese Communist Party, and also to make the association that when you think Chinese Communist Party you think Chinese people. So like it's fascinating because everything they're explaining as Chinese propaganda, I see it happen in real time on Twitter, where you'll see American journalists be like, "Oh, that's just xenophobic and all this other stuff," because people will say like the Chinese Communist Party is doing this, and you're like, it's explaining like that's literally their strategy is to get people to think that things that they do it's like you're talking shit about Chinese people, when in reality it's just the Chinese Communist Party. It's a political party, and then they show how the party is really they've associated themselves as the state. So it's like it's fascinating. I would highly recommend everybody to read this book. I started reading it. I got a couple books over the weekend because we've been talking about lately. I've been reading this book, The Coming of Neo-Feudalism. So I kind of have like a few books that I kind of read at a time. So I've got that one that I've been going through, and to see like it's interesting because I was like reading this one going, it seems like they're just talking a lot about the tech elite in our country. They're not really getting the China part. And then literally the next page, as I'm reading this other book on this Coming Neo-Feudalism book, they start talking about China and their influence and how their tech elite and so forth in China and everything. So they're covering that in here too. And then I also got this other book. I haven't started reading it yet, but it looks really good. It's called The 100-Year Marathon, right? China's secret strategy to replace America as the global superpower. But what's really fascinating about all of it is you see it happening. The whole purpose of what they're doing is they want to basically get into everything, have total control, and then use digital surveillance technology to control the West. So it's like, think about it. Imagine everything with the instability that we're seeing in the United States right now, Joe Biden, all this stuff, right? It's making it like the US is falling apart and like the US is being weakened and everything, so that China can take control of all those pieces. Like they've already got so many pieces in place, right? But I was talking to Katie, And what I think likely is going to happen is you'll never notice it, but then the Chinese will just be in control. But you'll still feel like you live in Canada. We live in the United States. We have our own government. It's not, but they've been able to infiltrate so many points. And then think about it. What is everybody begging for right now?
More
Like
surveillance,
more surveillance, more rules, health control, health control. That's what we should call it instead of healthcare.
Yeah, health control.
Also, they're deplatforming people. Like Parler was taken off with the web servers, and it's like literally all the stuff that China would do in their country, we're all doing it to ourselves. It's only helping them because they're totally okay with just being like literal dictator fascists. But I think the problem is a lot of people I think in the US think like, oh, but the Chinese, they're actually more about equality and so forth. So part of their strategy has been, okay, so they realized, remember this whole thing about Bill Gates, right? How when he was doing the antitrust stuff and he was like, they were like, you need to reshape your image because people think you're an asshole. That's why you're losing. So he did that. He won the appeals, whatever happened, right? And then now everyone thinks he's like this magnanimous guy because he realized how he had to reshape his image if he wanted to have more control. He could have just be like this arrogant bastard, right? It's explaining China literally did that. Because remember before people were like, oh, China's this new upcoming dominant, player, but they're still backwards and they have human rights violations and all this stuff, right? So what they've done is over time start to reduce that perception and make it like they actually have the moral high ground. Like they're about equality and everything, right? And I remember I saw this account on Twitter months back, and it was so fascinating everything they were saying. It was a Chinese account and they were clearly pro-Chinese Communist Party, but everything they were saying was like the BLM talking points. And it wasn't like they were pretending to be BLM. They were clearly they were like Chinese, like I'm a Chinese person, I support the Chinese government. But all of the things that they were saying was like, yeah, America's such a racist country. Like in China, we have equality, we respect people and all this stuff. It was like literally making you feel bad as an American, like, wow, maybe China is maybe they are more advanced and more equitable and everything over there, right? But they explain in this book, they're very open about, not totally, but they have speeches where they explain all this stuff. It's like hidden in plain sight, right? But what American is going to go watch some speech in Chinese, right? How often are they going to translate a book from the Chinese Communist Party into English for the mass consumption? They do that. There was some kind of a concept called soft power. I think it was like in the 90s or something that was developed. And the people who in China keep tabs on these things, it was like developed as some kind of theory in the United States of like soft power, meaning persuasive power, ideological infiltration, that kind of stuff. So they were saying that's how we would, spread democracy and so forth, not through force, but through soft power. So China, they explained in the book, they immediately saw that as, oh, you guys are going to use that to come into China and try to ideologically change China. So we lose control in the Communist Party. So they immediately translated the book into English or into Chinese and spread it out. So they could show, hey, look, here's what their plans are. So they were like educating the people that they needed to know, like, here's what they're planning on doing, right? So you don't see it happening the other way, right? But it's really fascinating because it's not about anti-China per se. It's just you see the authoritarian sort of socialistic, we're the elite, we decide what's best, not we know what's best and we're supporting everyone to actually do what's best, like what we're talking about. This is we're just going to control everything. And their starting point is the Chinese people. You see what I mean? They're not all about everybody's equal. So the whole point is establish digital surveillance, lock down everything, total control, and then you have no more dissent. You won't even physically be able to dissent. And not that we're saying dissenting is the answer. It's not the answer, right? It's standing up, right, within yourself. But it really shows everything we're doing. It's like for someone to think that you can just continue life as is and not take more responsibility in this world, that is where things are headed. And we've been talking about this for years. Remember there was a call we were on 2 years ago, I think, Drake, right? Where I was talking about these points of China and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it for a while, right?
Yeah.
Where all this is going, like digital surveillance society and so forth, right?
Yeah.
But now I think if you're paying attention, like in the online digital social media world, you're seeing it happen in real time. Like, oh shit, this is really happening. And also another thing I was thinking about was have you guys been seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now? There's like 20,000 National Guard troops
Totally,
in
yeah.
DC right now. They've got fences and walls and everything around the Capitol and everything, right? Which is like super weird, right?
Yeah.
But it's like this point of the Trump supporters are so dangerous. That's why we have to do this. And you see all these people buying into that narrative.
Yeah.
Right. Just because of that one thing that happened recently, which is like not even that big of a thing. You know what I mean? And especially if you compare it to all the other shit that happened over this whole past year, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like another drop in the bucket, basically, right? But I think they're going to use that as, it's like the new form of, it's like, well, they're calling it domestic terrorists, right?
Yeah.
So they're starting to argue, they're starting to push the persuasion on the mainstream news and everything that the Trump supporters are like, they can't be trusted, basically. So now you have, everyone's afraid of the virus. Everyone's afraid of these people who are radicalized and everything. It's literally, and I was talking with Katie about this last night. In the Bush era, we got everyone so afraid of terrorists that they were able to push the Patriot Act and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And that was the right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now you got the left who was like, oh, fuck George Bush, dictator, da 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 da, right? I remember when I was in DC visiting my friend who went to Georgetown. This was like when I was in college, right? 2005 or something. And we were walking in the park in DC and this guy rides by on a bike and he just goes, Bush is a fascist, like randomly, like while he rides by, right? So you have all of that, Patriot Act and so forth, right? And then you find out James Clapper admitted, they were spying on us, all the NSA, Snowden stuff, right? And now you've got the COVID and the domestic terrorism stuff. You can't trust the people in the United States. So now it's just the excuse to go to another level of spying, security, lockdown, all that stuff.
You know, something I saw recently that just made so much sense is like, you've got now everyone feeling so uncertain on both sides, on all sides, not just both sides, all sides, right? Where you've got the left, you've got them fearing that the right has become completely radicalized, right? And then you've also got the right believing that those people in the Capitol, they were Antifa and all that, right? And so it's interesting because nobody actually wants any of that, or at least the vast majority of people, right? It's a small group of people who are actually involved with those things. And to be honest, it's both of those people. It's that far radical right and also Antifa as well. They're all a part of that, right? But the whole point is to get everyone to feel unstable. Somebody made this post that I found super interesting. And they were saying, on the one hand, on the news, you've got people fearing the vaccine, people fearing it like, oh my gosh, they're going to come to my house and stab me with this needle and force it and mandate it on me, right? But then on the other hand, you've got people who are dying to get their hands on this vaccine where they're like, I can't find it and they won't release it to me. And it's because I'm not a doctor or a nurse or whatever. And I really need, and so it's like, they're playing the game on both sides.
Wow.
And it's really interesting with that point with China, they're doing the same thing. They're playing the game on both sides. So it's just creating this, not just a disruption, but like, who the fuck can you trust? Like, what can you even put together yourself? Everything just is like, oh my God, we're all divided. We're all divided. No, I don't trust you or you or you or you. Fuck everybody. Fuck everything. I'm just gonna stay home. I'm just gonna stay home.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna watch, the few entertaining things that I enjoy, and I'm gonna try to stay away from all that stuff or I'm gonna get really into like, I can't believe they're gonna come to my house and stab me. Like either way, it's this really like divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
Where we've all been literally separated physically from one another, and all the information that you're getting to see is just from the mainstream narrative, what they want you to see, because we're seeing very clearly, if you don't play ball, they take you off. If you're Parler and you're just letting people talk whatever they want to talk, nope, sorry, you're gone.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is like they were saying, oh, because the Capitol riots, like that was incubated on Parler, and Parler's like, There's not even a way you can form a group on Parler. So how would that even be possible? But
And then the New York Times came out and said it was
exactly,
actually happening on Facebook is where it was
Exactly.
happening. Yeah.
exactly. I don't see them deplatforming Facebook. I don't see Amazon saying, "Oh, can't use our servers." I don't even know if they use Amazon.
Because it's not about the truth, is it?
no,
It's really, like you said, it's about divide and conquer. It's about getting people paranoid and so forth. It's not really, because when you're paranoid, you're going to allow someone to say, I can take care of you. I can make it okay. I can make it safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like we've been saying for a while now, all of these relationships that are structuring our society have to fall apart. That doesn't mean people have to suffer. We don't have to have that. But the only way to prevent the suffering when that occurs is to simultaneously be standing up and saying, let's make sure everybody has what they need, but then not use it as a way to manipulate people to get more control over them.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem that I see moving forward for all of us, is that people are going to be giving up their freedoms and their rights, not really get much in return, just an idea of security, so that a few other people rather can have control and have amazing lives and everything. It's the kind of the same story that's been happening forever, but now it's really affecting people in the first world that didn't see it before.
that's a really cool, like, beautiful point as well. Just the fact that all these relationships are going to have to fall and dissolve, right? Because if you don't know where to go from there, you're going to feel like oh my God, that's so terrible. That's scary. Like, I don't want that to happen. But if you have a solution, if you have like, okay,
Right.
well, you can see clearly those relationships weren't good anyway. They were all fake. They were all like built on lies. They were all abusive, right? So it's actually a good thing and that's kind of what they're saying with the Great Reset. That's the whole narrative. Is like, hey, we have an opportunity to fix all these things that we knew weren't working anyway, right? But, or at least that's the narrative that they go with, right? But now it's like, okay, let's come up with a real solution. The reason why that's such a scary idea is because everyone's running around with like chickens with their heads cut off, right? And they're not actually considering or even able to see that, oh, this is something we can fix, we can correct, we can work towards together as a society. But they're so lost. That's why we have these podcasts, right? So like,
Right. People have no sense of real purpose.
yeah,
So it's like, when you have no purpose, what is your thought? Like you said earlier, it's like, well, just entertain myself. And then,
Exactly.
well, if my security is threatened, okay, let me just get whatever I need to do to get security so I can just entertain myself. That's not a real purpose.
Yeah.
So people are going to present no obstruction whatever to this. And it's not about fighting, but if we're going to direct society and our world into a way where you're not just going to get, like, think about it, having just basic security and entertaining yourself is not fulfilling. It's not. There's more to life than that, especially when it's like you have to cut off basically all physical connection. That's not gonna go well for anybody. So it might seem temporarily like, okay, that's good, but it's gonna take a toll. And then eventually people are gonna be upset. Then there's gonna be consequence we have to deal with. So it's much better to stand up now and to direct yourself. And that basically means walking within a group where we have common principles, and then developing influence and wealth. And I mean, it's fascinating because everything that we're suggesting is what the Chinese did. Do you see that? Like, literally. And that's what I really wanted to explain to you guys. Like, they developed wealth, they have their own principles that they stick by. And then they're like, we're going to spread that no matter what. And we're going to influence everybody that we can, no matter what. And they have no morality about it.
that's basically what a family does. Well, a family that's like working together, they're working well. They have the same principles,
Exactly.
and they are encouraging each other. They're helping each other. They're growing. They're expanding. And when they bring somebody into their family, it's like, hey, we'd like for you to have these principles as well. If you're going to be a part of this family, at least the elite families, right? That's what
Yeah.
they're. If you look at, it's funny because I like to use the example of like a mafia, right? Because a mafia is like a family that they have a certain code that they all live by, and that there's like, this is how we're going to grow. And I'm using that example specifically because you look at the Kennedys, they were a part of bootlegging, which is like, that's a mafia activity, right? And then they were able to grow that to such an extent where then they had office in the United States government, being presidents and
Yeah.
having many family members that became senators or congressmen or whatever the case may be. And that's still going on to this day, right? And that just shows when you have a family that, or a group of people even, that have the same principles and you're growing off of those principles, what you can actually accomplish. They got into the presidency and continue on to this day, you know?
So the point there is just what is your starting point within getting in there, right? And that's why everything we're doing together is based on principle. We don't get there unless we help a lot of people to change themselves, to educate themselves, educate their families. So everything we do to get where we need to be, to have the influence we should have because of what we understand, is only by helping other people. Versus every other example, China, all these other examples, they got there by basically being abusive. You see what I mean? And that's really the fundamental difference. So
Wow. Earlier this week, I rewatched the movie Zeitgeist. I'm sure we've all seen that at some point.
oh yeah,
If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's online. And it was the first movie that really like shook me in a sense of like, oh wow, all this stuff that I had just not thought twice about, I really need to question. Like, where does the money come from? What is a false flag operation? You know, what is a war? What is the war on terror? You know, what's the starting point of religion? But the difference was the first time I saw it, I was just like more shocked and kind of, it was like, it's like when you hear about a conspiracy theory and it's like kind of fun to talk about. It's like you get that energetic charge. It's like, oh shit, like what if that's happening, right? But now so we watch it again. Jess, me and Asia, who's here, and it was so eye-opening because now that I have all this context from everything that I've been learning basically ever since I started using TechnoTutor and really looking for myself at how do we actually change the world, you know, for what's best. That has been eye-opening. And I see how it's like what's happening right now in front of our very eyes with COVID and with the whole election and like people not trusting even like the very legitimacy of like American like voting system. It's like this classic principle that's been used throughout the ages of divide and conquer, pin people against each other. And then at the very end, they have one of the Rockefellers just talking and he says like the long plan is to get people, it just, you know, global surveillance state. And he says that when it's done effectively, the people will demand it on themselves. And it's like, look right now. I mean, just go outside anywhere and don't have a mask on. And it's that look of like, how fucking could you? Like what are you like, you know, people confront you. And it's like, holy shit, it's been so effectively done. And yeah, it's happening in front of us. And so I'm the kind of person though that I'm like, okay, let's fucking do something about this. Cause like we all realize like what sitting at home, defending, you know, your own security just so you can be entertained, like that's a sad fucking existence. And so, you know, what can actually be done about it? And it's been phenomenal to see this whole new wave of people coming into like the TechnoTutor network and Self-Perfected, of like people who are like so fed up already. Like, why the fuck are we locked down? This makes no sense. People in Quebec, wasn't it Quebec? I think it was Joel was saying that the lockdown, it was like literally there's police checkpoints now.
There's like curfew, and they said
Yeah.
they sent out, they used the emergency broadcast system on your phone.
all of these countries spent the last 4 years saying Trump was like a Hitler and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the moment he's like on his way out, they're all like, okay, cool guys, bring out the concentration camps, bring out the checkpoints. I'm like, what the fuck? And everyone's like, yes, we need to do this because Trump was so bad. And you're like, oh my God, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So is it the same way in Ontario or what?
Ontario, we got it's so funny because we're in this enhanced lockdown, and then a couple days, like a week later.
What does enhanced mean, Asif?
Enhanced, it's a modified stage 2. I remember
Jesus Christ.
I know. And then after a week later, they put out a stay-at-home order. And it was already that. It was like don't leave your house unless it's for essential activities such as exercise, healthcare, groceries, and something else. And and then basically everybody unanimously was like, did anybody else feel like anything changed? No? Okay, cool. So what was the point of that?
It's like they're just impulsing everybody with "we tell you what to do now."
Exactly. And yeah, me and my for another friend from Techno Tutor in Ontario, it's like Doug Forrest just like being like, look how big my dick is.
Yeah.
Like, look. He's like the state representative, if you will, of Canada, of Ontario.
Yeah.
And so just the point that I wanted to talk about more and really get into on a more individual level, so collective and individual, is this concept that you mentioned on the last call that we had together, the perfect parenting group that we have. And it's such a fascinating point because in every way I see that it's true. And in every way we see it happening more and more. It's that point of, if it's not real, it will fall apart. And this has to do with our relationships, with our romantic relationships, right? With our partners or whatever the case may be, with our children, with our jobs, right? If you're not actually doing something real, what's going to happen with it? And same thing for the story in your head about how you tell yourself what's valuable in the world and what's valuable in your life and all that stuff. If it's not equal to reality, if it's not real, it will fall apart. And right off the bat, at the very start of the pandemic, right, we were talking about all of the consequences of what people are experiencing. It's like, for the first, you're seeing all these memes of like parents taping their children to the floor and being like, oh my God, I just need a break from my kids, like for like just like 20 minutes, please. That's the reality of your relationship with your kids. It's like, man, I'm spending time for the first time with my spouse because we're both working from home, and it's just like god awful, right?
I don't actually like this person.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Right. And all the predictions that when the divorce courts open back up, that the divorce rate's going to shoot up and all this stuff. It's like, and the same thing that we've all been experiencing of like any fear or anything like that you have holding you back in your head. If it's not real, it's going to fall away as well. Because that's how we've been pushing ourselves, right? That's our momentum cycle, right? Of like, oh, but if you go into the store and you don't have a mask, someone's going to kill you. Someone's going to film you put you on Facebook and all this stuff. And then you go do it. And you're like, yeah, no. You just keep going. And you're like, oh, that wasn't real. That falls away too. So it's every aspect of it. And it'd be cool if we got in a little bit about how each of us individually have been seeing that point fall away for other people, right? Because we all talk to a lot of different people, right? And the first place to start with is making money. How many people have lost their income source because what they were doing didn't fucking matter? Right? The income sources that are left are the ones that specifically uphold the system. What are some examples?
Oh, I went on Indeed yesterday because I'm, building the sales team here with
Right.
Techno Tutor. And I was just like, what other jobs are out there right now? I just want to know like what we're like, what people would be choosing between.
Right.
I found this. It said one of the top searches was contact tracing. I was like, interesting. So I click into it, and there is pages and pages and pages and pages of like every local business, local school. All these people need like what was the word for it? Doesn't even matter. It's like a COVID specialist or like a COVID
Need
manager.
someone in your business to do that part of
to
things.
be your COVID task force.
What do they do?
What did they become the CCCP person in your business?
That is what they are.
Only Chinese may
weird.
apply.
But what would be their responsibilities at so far as you can see?
Probably like testing people, make sure no one tests positive, whatever that means.
I want to say something real quick
It's
because
like the new
6 feet.
HR.
right.
Yeah.
It's like Maylat, she's been watching like a lot of documentaries now, and like one of the first ones, she started watching a bunch of Chinese stuff, and not in Chinese, like in English, but one of the ones that she watched was, so you have the Chinese social credit score, right? You do bad, your points drop, you can't get a loan, you can't fly first class, all that stuff, right? Then there's also the people in a neighborhood. One lady that they're following, two different documentaries followed it. The people in the neighborhood that get paid to do what?
Snitch.
Snitch, right? And it's like
course.
she's going around just being like, "Hi, hey neighbors." She like opens their fucking door and like, "Hey, what are you guys up to? What are you guys up to?" "Okay, all right, okay. Bye, bye." Everyone's like, "Ha, ha, ha." You know? And there's like one guy like,
walks in.
card. He's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, she got a notebook, right? She got a notebook. How are things going? Okay, all right, cool. Okay, see you later." And just keeps going. It's like, whoa. And she's like, she's proud of it, right? It's like, that's what's being installed
Yeah.
in different places. I remember when I was looking up to go to Houston, right? I was looking up like what are the details of what you can travel and all that stuff. And I think we were on it was probably after a podcast or before a podcast. And we had looked up, I was looking up the different details, right? And apart from like the up to $1 million in fines and 3 years in prison and all that stuff, there was like one part where it said your score will decrease. And I was like,
Was it compliance score or something?
yes, your compliance score. Exactly. Thank you, Mitchell. It's like, wait, we don't have that yet.
Yet.
But what are they referring to? It's like they're already setting the groundwork of like putting all the paperwork in place, or like, you know, the guidelines and all that stuff. Then they implement it and it's like already there. It's I was like, what compliance score? And it's very interesting because in China, or at least certain parts of it, the number, even just like the amount of the number, like in terms of the range that it fluctuates at, in terms of the social credit score, it varies like the same number in Canada as your credit score. It's like, you know, 600 to like 900.
I've already got the same
and
range.
all-
So it's like,
Exactly. It's like, that's,
and people, like you said, people will beg for it because they're like, you know what, we do need to control people because you have these idiots who won't wear their masks or do this or that or whatever. Oh, one thing real quick before I forget, I wanted to mention, since you said that Maylat's watching these documentaries, suggest to her One Child Nation.
one child.
One- Yeah, Katie told me about it, and it's all about she's watched it, all about the one child policy, and then like it just goes into a lot of stuff about that. So I think that would be an eye opener for her. I mean, she was talking about like piles of bodies of children, right?
Hey, Maylat, we're on the podcast right now, and Cameron we're talking about the podcast. I mean, the documentaries that you're watching, and Cameron recommended One Child Nation.
Katie recommends it.
Yeah, Katie recommends One Child Nation. What do they talk about in that?
It's about the one child policy.
The one child
Okay.
policy in China. Okay,
Yeah.
check it out. All right. Bye.
Yeah. So I've heard a lot about, just from what she told me. She's like kind of explained a lot of it, but it sounds good. So
Yeah. And then on that point though, what Asa was bringing up is like the income opportunities now that are out there tend to be holding the system in place. And now you see how it's, and I mean, imagine that with like Amazon, for example. They're going to have new levels of employees that's going to come out because, oh, there's a whole new automation line rolling out. But then sure enough, it's going to be, go from 100 jobs to 1 or 2.
Right.
That's
I
happening
I
in
want to
front of
read
our
this
eyes.
little quote real quick from the Coming of Neo-Feudalism.
And afterwards, let me tell you about a sales point that's being limited afterwards.
Okay, it says the tech oligarchs have not produced a coherent political manifesto laying out their vision for the future. Yet it's clear that the IT elite in firms such as Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft share some ideas that add up to a common agenda. I'll just read this quick part. In the developing technocratic worldview, there's little place for upward mobility except within the charmed circle at the top. The middle and working classes are expected to become marginal. While the oligarchs might speak of a commitment to building what Mark Zuckerberg calls meaningful community, they rarely mention upward mobility. Having interviewed 147 digital company founders, Gregory Ferenstein notes that they generally don't expect their workers or consumers to achieve more independence by starting their own companies or even owning houses. Most, they add, believe that an increasingly greater share of economic wealth will be generated by a smaller slice of very talented or original people, Everyone else will come to subsist on some combination of part-time entrepreneurial gig work or government aid.
Wow, a good talking point that I'm gonna at least start. I'm gonna be developing this is you know how there's a whole talk about like equity and equitable and health equity. That's a new one I never heard before of how vaccines can get distributed to, you know, to all types of people, right?
Oh, cool.
Let's start challenging people on, well, what's Facebook's take on upward mobility? Like, do they not think that we should all be able to actually like really go up, you know, and all join them at the top? That'll be interesting to see.
When you hear that point they said about meaningful community, you're like, holy shit, that is every time they're talking and doing their little Facebook, you know, the ones that they do from Facebook, their little videos or seminars or whatever
Happy
they call
friend
them,
anniversary.
they're always talking about like, we're building meaningful community and all this shit. It's like, yeah, you guys just stay over there and play and we'll kind of create the systems for you. But we're the ones who are actually going to fucking do some cool shit in this world. But
yeah,
you guys
we'll make it so that the only thing you care about, the only thing that brings meaning to you is our community that we created for you. Like, it's like they're creating like a little play place for all the kids to play in.
Yeah. And then they have the, what do they call it? Community guidelines.
Right.
It's
Right.
like the rules at the playground.
Yeah.
It's literally what it is. Like, here's what you can and can't do.
And it was
No
so
shouting,
dumb.
no running. You're like, I can't run the
Exactly.
playground.
Like no climbing, but it's a
Yeah, you're like, what?
climbing
No
structure.
pushing. You're like, what?
But also with like, I think the next paragraph after the one that you just read, they talk about how they're not looking to fund any of that. Like they're not expecting any of that to come out of their pockets. They're expecting that to come out of the
They're all supporting a
middle class.
UBI basically.
That's why they push
Yeah.
taxes, higher taxes, higher taxes.
Yeah.
And it never makes sense to me when you say it from that perspective, because it's like, but if we're, think about it, the elite are never going to pay the taxes.
right.
They're going to find ways to get around it.
When have they ever paid the taxes?
They haven't. And the same people saying, it's like when Warren Buffett says, well, I should be paying more taxes. Like, you know, you could just voluntarily give more money to the government. I understand why what are you waiting for? Right. They're just saying that, you know, they're full of shit. So yeah, they're not, it's like even the whole idea of funding the basic income from like microtransactions on digital payments and so forth. It's like, but if everybody's paying a little bit more for all their shit, how is that equaling everybody getting the $2,000 a month? It just doesn't make sense logically. You see what I mean? Because if you're buying a Ferrari, you're not going to buy that on Amazon. So like big things like a private jet, they're not going to get taxed like that. It's going to be like the little stuff like the shit people buy on Amazon. But if you're spending a little bit extra on all of your transactions and then you're getting money every month, like who's the one actually having to pay what's, do you see what I'm saying? It's just coming from us. So it doesn't make sense to do it from that perspective, the taxing route. It's never going to work that way.
I'm just looking at the perspective of like the elite are the ones saying they want this meaningful community, but they're not willing to actually put into it as far as like monetarily. They'll create the playground and the rules for you, but they're not actually going to pay for it. You have to pay for the rules that you also have to follow, which is shitty. Nobody wants that.
There was I was talking with a friend the other day, and I was just as we were just talking afterwards, it's all the dots were getting connected for me, right? And he was talking about online marketing, and I was just understanding the points and how it relates to where things are at now, where a certain industry that me and Ken used to be a part of, like the home renovation door-to-door sales. Now, because of how savage everybody was, let the free markets decide, they were like scamming the shit out of people door to door and all that stuff. They shut down the industry of being able to go door to door and sell. You can go door to door.
Home renovations or
Specifically home renovations. Yeah. Specific like HVAC, which is like furnaces, air conditioners, water cooler, different water filtration systems, all this stuff. But basically what I saw, if I just look at the result of it only, okay, it's like now what all these sales companies are reliant or dependent on is online marketing. But he was explaining to me how SEO works, search engine optimization, and you can use AdWords and different things like that. And basically one of the things that you can do is you basically have your ad bank account. You fill it up with a bunch of money. I'm just oversimplifying it. And you can say, hey, I want to spend this much money a day on this word, so that whenever somebody Googles this word, my stuff will come up. And that's what I understood. I had this post saved by you, Cameron, of if you Google socialism and racism, what pops up is, do you remember that? Capitalism. and
Vaguely,
racism.
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's because somebody paid for when those words come up, it gets replaced with these search terms. Like, that's very interesting. The other point is the little guy cannot compete anymore because to even play, because you get charged every time there's a click, to even play, you have to have dozens of thousands of dollars in that account per month, because you have big guys like, let's just say the equivalent of Bell in the HVAC sector, right? They have way bigger ad
You're
budget.
never going to compete with those guys. Yeah.
So in terms of upward mobility, it's being totally crushed.
Yeah.
Where the traditional means of being able to become really wealthy, because there's a lot of people in sales who are able to make a lot of money just by doing like total, like not creating real value, just way overcharging for things that don't cost that much, but they're able to make millions and millions. So in terms of the things that remain are things that uphold the system, but an even more general statement is things that don't end up creating competition, the upward mobility point. So I think in terms of income, it's such a, everything, Cameron, that you and Avery have been talking about over the last 2 years, 4 years, which is as long as I've known you guys, but I'm certain that you guys were talking about it way before. I'm seeing all of it come to fruition, right? Because they were saying, hey, have you guys ever considered doing AdWords and things like that, or Facebook ads? Because that's how the little guy competes. They just do Facebook ads because you don't have to compete with like the big players.
Search terms stuff, yeah.
Right. So he was saying, have you guys ever considered doing that? Maybe not for the self-perfected group, but for the podcast. I was like, hey, I don't know if you guys have been seeing this, but it's like Maylat listens to some commentary kind of videos, right? And instead of saying, they say racist instead of saying racist,
So that they don't get hit by the algorithm.
Exactly. So the algorithm doesn't pick up on their voice. I didn't want to say it there. So, because I don't know how it works really, to be honest, education, right? And
I think we're already in the
exactly. We're not even close. So it's like, they don't want to say,
I support Trump. Like, I am not a racist. I support Trump. And you're like having to create this whole nother accent.
I love China. I love China. I love China. Oh, wait, we just bumped up.
We're at number one now. So, and they're bleeping out these like certain words and all that stuff, right? So it's like, yeah, if anything, we would not do it for the podcast, because that would be the first thing that they say. Yeah, no, we're removing all of your ads.
Right.
Like, we're making sure that you're never.
Oh, so the point is to like monetize the podcast is what its suggestion was,
or get it to reach more people, basically.
Oh, okay.
Right. He's like,
See,
oh,
but
what?
again,
I thought about that. And then as soon as I mentioned that, they're like, oh yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. Right.
It's like, you like it. Why don't you just tell somebody about it?
Yeah,
It's not hard.
Yeah.
So with that point, it's like, we're all seeing it, right? We're all seeing this person got shut down. Parler got shut down. This got shut down. This is why, if you were relying on your Instagram presence, you were relying on your social media persona, your TikTok account.
Speaking of fake things that have to fall. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
If you're relying on that and you're trying to fool yourself that you're making a difference, either you're going to last because you're not doing fucking anything, or you're not going to last because you're doing something real. Where, what's the solution? We bring back real relationships. We build the networks in our communities. You get back to being with your fucking family for real. You have friends over to your house. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just another extension of, if it's not real, it will fall. And it's becoming very, very clear, because I don't know how long this will last for. We just keep going. It doesn't matter. Right. That's why, for those of you in Self-Perfected, you've heard Mitch talk about it. You've heard me talk about it. It's like, the next point of building is creating our own platforms.
Yeah.
Clearly, we can't use the Amazon Web Service, right? Because that will just get.
You know what's funny is whenever I was talking to Katie about this book, and I was like, yeah, I ordered a few books on China and so forth from Amazon, and she was like, oh, these will be banned soon. And it's funny because when she said that, I'm like, you're probably right. And that was part of my thinking was like, let me go and get all the books I can that are about these points because you don't know how long they're going to be up there.
Dude,
Wow.
And
you're
it's not
gonna
a
be
joke.
banned.
They're literally banning shit all the time. Huh?
You're gonna be banned soon from like Amazon. Amazon's gonna be like, this guy has ordered a lot of fucking books on this. I don't like the way he's thinking. They already know.
Oh yeah, seriously.
You're
You know
China's
what's
like,
funny?
okay.
You know, like it's like after you presented the Napoleon Hill story in your audio, a secret behind the secret behind the secret in discussions about reality. If you go to Cameron Cope's YouTube channel, it's like that is what gives me the confidence of they don't think you're going to do anything. They don't think any of us are going to do anything. They don't think any average person is going to do anything. Of course, they're looking to become more and more and more preventative, where eventually the food is going to be so fake that you can't even process anything. Your brain's never even going to develop properly. But just to finish that point, it's like Napoleon Hill said, guys, I released this to the public. I released all the secrets, all this stuff. And the wealthy people were like, oh, fuck. He's like, don't worry. They're all too stupid. Don't worry. You know what I mean?
What they're concerned about, think about this, okay? We just spent the last year of giving the elite permission to control things that go viral.
Huh.
Do you see what I mean?
Huh.
So that's when it goes viral, that's when they want it to shut down.
Dude,
Right.
dude, on so many levels, that statement. We just gave
Yep.
the elite permission to control things that go viral. Like, wow.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's the whole point is they don't want something viral to then have influence. Right. So
Unless they're given that.
well, yeah, going back to your point about being an Instagram influencer or whatever, unless you're saying something that is basically fucking meaningless, literally meaningless, you're not going to go viral because the moment it actually means something, they're going to shut you down.
Or that you're supporting their shit, right?
Look at what's happened to every single person that's
Who
gone
stood up
against the narrative. And
and
then
said-
they either got totally shut down or switched their ways and now they're okay.
Yeah.
You know, but they don't say anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it's happening constantly. But the point here is everything is direct anyways. Right? They're
When
not going to
you-
shut down
Everyone-
direct, meaning I'm not trying to go viral.
Mhm.
It's just direct one-on-one.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, and then the network effect of that. So one person effectively directly shares with 10 people who just get it. And then each of those 10 people share with 10 more people. You know?
And you see how it's like
Isn't that how a virus actually works?
right? Unless you're
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Asif. Or maybe the virus gets uploaded and gets spread over a network, like a 5G. No, I'm just kidding. Don't shut me down.
5G. We'll call 5G.
These are good, Mitchell. Keep doing these. This is funny. And if you talk smack about China, you say China. That's good.
Or we can say it like Avery, we like Jeff Bozo.
That Bezos.
Jeff Bezos.
Bezos.
I don't know what the fuck I was saying. What were you saying?
You're talking about it going direct.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to say real quick, shout out that video that you sent me, Jake. You guys got to watch that video. It's the
Okay.
Barricade Garage about what's it called? It's about free speech.
Yeah. I don't know. if
Everybody
it's-
got to watch that
I don't
video.
know,
It's so
but
funny.
I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, it's like one of his latest videos, right? It's so good.
Do you know like the title that you could just say it right now?
Hold on, I think it's right here. Let me just grab it real quick.
Called free speech
Uh,
something.
Yeah, it was. Nope, I don't have it. Free
The-
speech. How-
Sorry,
the
folks.
Barricade Garage is the YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description.
I have to go through all of my 5 different messaging apps now to figure out where the fuck it is.
Yeah, that's funny.
I'm having 3 conversations with like the same person on like Signal Messenger here.
When
Yeah.
speech is
Like,
not
can we
free,
just
but-
agree on this one? It's called
Speech
When
is Not
Speech is
Free.
Not Free. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That
so
was-
fun. He's like,
that
he's like,
was-
censor yourself.
Yeah.
The other day when Signal went down, because I think it was like too many people were trying to. I don't know what happened, but something was
Not
up
that
with
we
their
use
server.
Signal. I mean, hypothetically.
Yeah. Like I heard, like how Parler went down. Yeah, it's just like wow, we're so dependent on these platforms, to get these points across. So anyway, Asif, go ahead.
No, yeah, it was just that point of unless you specifically looked for it, you wouldn't know that the Chinese Communist Party is infiltrating America. That's how we're working. You won't know. It'll be too late when you catch us, you motherfuckers. There'll be too many of us.
Even though we're literally telling you right now to your fucking algorithm.
but you know what I mean? It's like for the people that might go, who are listening to this, that might go into despair, might go into worry or any of that stuff. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because anything that is real will stand no matter what.
But hang on, don't worry about it doesn't mean don't do anything.
Don't do anything, right? Exactly.
Okay, let me go back to my video game.
Yeah,
It's like-
exactly.
Oh, fuck. Okay, you guys got it. All right.
But also, you know, let's assume for a moment that we are talking to an algorithm,
Mhm.
because we are, and we're teaching it something,
Okay.
right? We're not a threat to the system. The system is falling apart. The system that's keeping the algorithm alive right now is falling apart. It can't last. We're here to change things so that we can have a real system that's sustainable forever. So when you said real, building a real system, part of that means eternal. Eternal meaning if you have the principle.
Wait. I think I heard Seneca playing the recorder downstairs. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
It's just like-
I was wondering what that sound was. I'm like, I remember Seneca walking around doing
She's
Okay.
probably walking around like playing it.
Yeah.
That's our theme song.
It's just like that C note.
Yeah. What are you saying?
But what I was gonna say is like eternal means
Right.
it's not just the idea of lasting forever and ever and ever infinitely. It means the principle you're operating within, the consequences it produces are sustainable because it's never going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
So the principle of what's best for all, that's why like the United States, even itself, principally can't sustain itself because it's not considering what's best for everybody. You know, and I know a lot of people are all fans of America and the Constitution and all this stuff, and I am too, but it's just one of the stepping stones in our process of self-evolution. It's not the end all be all. So the people who are trying to we just need to go back to that. It's like, that's what made all of this possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but we need to realize we have to mature as individuals and evolve the system.
Dude, it's that exact point that Bernard makes in Fall of God when he says, because you could fall from there means you can't go back to it. It can't be trusted.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
well said.
sense. You know, it's like you have to transcend that. You have to get better than that. You have to be
Yeah.
more. You have to grow. So okay, yes, Constitution, awesome. Yes,
Individual rights, a right to
Awesome.
property, right to,
Yes.
you know, all these points. Yes.
yes. However, we have to go further than that. We can't just go back to that.
If they were enough, then this other communist fucking system would have zero appeal.
it would never happen. It would never happen. It wouldn't even make sense. You know?
You know what's fascinating too? I just want to add this. One of the things they made this point is in China, Xi Jinping, who's like the leader or whatever of the Communist Party, there was a point where some of the leaders, like in the past few decades, wanted to like kind of move away from, you know, the past of communism, you know, because like all these people died of starvation, all this stuff back then, you know. But Xi Jinping and his like followers and stuff, they decided to go to like not participate in any of that, of like questioning the party's past, because and they were explaining how they studied the Soviet Union, and they looked at their principal reasons of why they saw the Soviet Union fell, and one of them was they allowed ideological infiltration of the West, and they started questioning their party's past. They like rejected Stalin, they rejected Lenin, and he was like, all of those things, and there was one other one, I forget what it was, all of those things allowed for kind of the party to lose control. So he's like, no, fuck that. So they put these statements out, and then they started cracking down on anybody who was like questioning the party's past or anything, right? And the reason I brought it up is because what did we see happening big time this summer in the United States? Is like the explosion of everybody being like, yo, the United States is so racist and all this and all that. They're literally, I'm not blaming China because we're also doing it to ourselves. It's not about they're doing it to us, like, but they are definitely supporting it because they're smart. They're like getting us to do all the things that they saw brought the Soviet Union down.
Holy shit.
And from their perspective, and they were saying that they use doublethink amazingly.
Wow.
He said, it says in the book, they explain how if someone in America, let's say, says, hey, we need to push back against China, the Chinese and like the people that they've indoctrinated, whether the people realize that they've been indoctrinated or not, like they could be someone in the West, they'll be like, hey, that's Cold War mentality. Like we need to go beyond that, right? It's propaganda that the Chinese push. He said, because from their perspective, they believe the Cold War never ended. But if you try to push back, they'll make you feel like, hey, you're just still in the Cold War mentality. But from their perspective, they're still in it. You see how that game is played, right?
Yeah, it's so intelligent. It's like, it's really masterful from the perspective of like, you know how we talk about Bill Gates having like reading 3 books a day while he's running Microsoft, and they're all about computers, Microsoft, or software rather, computer science, all that stuff, right? He's reading all of that stuff. From the perspective of what you're saying with the Chinese Communist Party, they're looking at all of this information about the information that we've put out about how to like, what do you call it? Soft
power. Yeah.
Soft power. Okay. Yeah. Soft power. And all the things that is like, oh, this is how they're influencing. Okay. Now let's spread all this information to everybody. And then they have all of that data like accessible to them. Whereas here in the States, we're pretty fragmented, you know, as far as like being on the same page about where we're going as a country and all of that. There, they have like, no, this is what we're doing. This is the party line. And here's what you need to be knowledgeable of, so that when it comes time to like these events are happening, they can decisively make decisions of, oh, okay, here's how we're going to use that. Here's what we're going to say. And that's going to benefit us. It's so fucking masterful.
There's this one really cool quote about the soft power. It says, as the National Endowment for Democracy has argued, authoritarian powers like China do not rely on soft power, but on sharp power, the exercising of coercive and manipulative influence. Right. Wow. And it's like, one thing as I'm reading this, it's like, I was texting somebody earlier about it. I'm like, you know what I think it was USF. I'm like, guess what they don't give a fuck about? Your feelings. I'm not criticizing, I'm not judging them. And this is the problem. People will go into judgment and they'll be like, oh, you're being judgmental. I'm not being judgmental. But when you're like, hey, Cameron, you're really mean because you said I was a loser, or you said I'm weak, because they're being weak. You're not respecting my feelings. It's like, don't play games with me. Do you think the fucking Google algorithm gives a fuck about your feelings? Like, do you understand? Like, you don't give a fuck about anyone else's feelings. You don't care about the thousands of children that are dying every day. And then somebody will try to turn that against you. They'll be like, oh, you're just pretending to care. I'm not pretending to care. I actually care. That's why I'm willing to push past my limitations and my weaknesses and my fears and all that stuff and put myself outside my comfort zone and go into conflict. You know, and the idea of being manipulative is bad. It's like, I think we talked about this last time. Manipulation without education is the problem. You can't help but manipulate. And somebody will be like, oh, see those self-perfected guys? Oh, they're just trying to manipulate you. See, oh yeah, see, they really are about manipulation. They're admitting it. That person is trying to manipulate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The person who says, don't be a part of self-perfected. They're like a cult. They're going to manipulate you. They just want you to join their pity party where they're all alone and isolated because they have no principles. And really, they just want you to join the system back with them and kind of go off and do fucking nothing with your life, because they're like, you know, like Asif always makes this point, I think it's you, about like the Agent Smiths, right? You know, you're always talking about that, right? It's like the Agent Smith, and suddenly you're like, that person's an Agent Smith, and suddenly he takes over that body and that body. That's consciousness. That's the ego. It so easily activates.
It's like it's like Trump's just like walking around outside. They're like, he's being divisive. Everybody, let's hate him. It's like, that's the vision.
And then as soon as he's exiting, they're like, Trump supporters, they're just unredeemable. You know, we need to prevent them from ever doing anything or flying. And you're like, so literally the things that you said a Hitler would do, and that you had to get this guy out of here because he would do those things, which he never did. Now you're going to do them, even though he's gone. And like this other thing, Katie keeps talking to me about, that how Biden was talking about the big lie. They keep saying Trump and them are pushing the big lie. That's literally something that Hitler and his propagandist said. Right? If you look it up, they were saying here, well, somebody can look it up, but
It's
they
like
were
it's like
pushing
they're
this
using
part
that-
about, huh?
It's like they're like watching like, how did Hitler prevail? Okay, let's do that.
No, what's so ironic about it, and I was talking about this this morning, it's like they're saying Trump is doing that and that's why he's like Hitler, but literally they're verbatim using the same techniques that that Hitler's party used.
All right. Look
And
at
then
this.
do you see what I'm trying to say? Trying to say he's doing something.
Can I screen share?
Yeah.
No,
No, it's
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna.
That's
No,
good.
don't screen share.
Just put it
I
in
think
the
it was
chat.
only because I was using like multiple monitors or something.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Here, okay,
I
I'll
don't
just
care
read
the
this.
reason.
I searched the big lie Hitler. Wikipedia initially says big lie Wikipedia. The expression was coined by Adolf Hitler when he dictated his 1925 book Mein Kampf about the use of a lie. I can go into this, but it's coined by Hitler, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing down. Top stories. NPR. Can the forces unleashed by Trump's big election lie be undone?
A big
Trump?
lie.
Oh, wait, now they try to throw it on Trump.
Now, if you go down, I got NBC, Jeffries. Trump and GOP pushed a quote big lie. Joe Biden and the lie. Biden bombs when comparing Trump to Nazi official. They're part of the big lie, Biden said, when we were told that, Goebbels and the great lie, right? And then it's like suddenly he's trying to like backtrack in the middle of the sentence. Where did it go? Biden has accused Republicans of being practitioners of the big lie.
Whoa, this is
So-
all over.
And I was talking with Katie about it, and it's like, okay, so they literally were like, let's call Trump Hitler. And he's bad because he's like Hitler. But then let's actually use Hitler's playbook. And I was saying to Katie, I'm like, the reason why they're doing it is because it's actually persuasive. It actually works psychologically. So they don't have any ethics or any morality about it. They're just like, it's effective. And so this is what people who are going to walk this process of standing up in this world have to realize. It doesn't justify violence or abusing another person. But you really got to be self-honest with yourself. If you're telling somebody you're being weak, stop accepting weakness. And then the purpose of what you're saying is for them to let go of something that is an actual limitation with themselves so they can become better. And let's say instead of them hearing you and instead of them being self-honest, they decide you're making me feel bad. Whose responsibility is that? Especially if you're saying, here's the tools that I use to support myself to walk through similar points. Here's the tools, do it for yourself. It'd be different if you just went to somebody and said, you're short, you're a loser. And like they had no way of like doing anything. Like then you're just being abusive. That's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? But if you were like, look, you're uneducated. Here's some books. Let me teach you how to read. And they're like, how dare you say I'm uneducated? Like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad for the purpose of just so you can continue to be in that state. I'm supporting you to see that there's a problem here that you need to solve.
I see your potential and I want to support you to get there.
Exactly. So it's a matter of what's your starting point within it. If another person, it's like, if you want to have kids and you have not processed and you have not actually fundamentally let go and changed the abuse that was done to you as a kid, you will end up abusing your children. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I can try to protect your feelings, which is literally me just defending your ego equals just defending the system that exists. Or I can challenge that when I know it's going to cause conflict and that's going to be uncomfortable for me.
Dude.
But if I'm willing to put myself in that position, see, I'm willing to give as I want to receive. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm not just making you feel bad. It's challenging also to stand in that position of conflict and be like, look, I know you don't want to hear this, but this is what I'm seeing is best. At the end of the day, if I'm wrong and you don't take what I'm saying and you improve and go on, that's great. That's okay. I could make a mistake.
Yeah.
But then who's responsible? I'm not sitting here saying I'm a victim of other people making me feel bad.
Yeah.
That's somebody who is stuck in a victim mentality of saying someone else made me feel a certain way, but then at the same time saying what, that everyone has the choice to live however they want, but then you're not actually applying that within yourself. You're saying you're just a victim to everybody. Because if it's true you're just a victim, that would imply something's wrong with this system that caused you to be in that state, and we should change that, which just comes right back to what we're saying.
Yeah, it's really cool this point that you're bringing up, because I remember like a couple years ago, I'd brought up to my mom like some of the things that she had done when I was a kid were like harmful. And when I brought it up to her, then she felt personally attacked by it, right? And we weren't able to really have a conversation about it because she felt hurt that I was bringing this up. And she was basically, like it was a personal attack, the way that she took it. But literally just last night, we were having a laugh about a video that she had found on the internet where it's a Dominican woman saying all these like Dominican phrases that you would hear. And it's all in Spanish, right? But the phrases generally translate to, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. Things like
that's
that.
That's what my
right?
parents used to say, yeah.
Right? And my mom used to say that, right?
Uh-huh.
And it was funny because we were having a laugh about it and saying she used to say that, but also her parents used to say that to her. And she was saying how it was just like this automatic thing. And we were able to talk about it now because she's also been walking this process with me. Like when I first brought it up to her, I brought it up to her with the intention of, hey, Ma, you've got to walk this process because that's within you. And she didn't understand that then, right? And she didn't understand how I was saying, like, I get that it's automatic, but that's still within you. You're going to still continue doing that to yourself and to the people that you interact with. And she was like, what? No, that was so long ago. I don't do that anymore. Just leave me alone, But now when we're talking about it, she's like, yeah, dude, it was automatic. I didn't know what to say in those situations. And that's just what came out of my mouth. Right. And so now it's cool because she'll call me and she'll be like, I caught myself doing this. And I could see it in the moment. And I realized like, oh, I can stop that. And then she'll ask me, okay, well, how do I do this? Like for this other thing where it just seems really automatic. I'm like, same process, Ma. Same process, what we're talking about here. Doing the IP, using your TechnoTutor, all of that. And it's so cool because she's not taking it personally anymore. And I don't feel like I have to even like bring those things up to her because I know she's walking her process and she's seeing it for herself. And so she'll come to me with the things of like, oh, I just realized how much this thing that my mother did impacted me and all the decisions that I made off of that. And I didn't even realize like how I've been letting that kind of just run my life. And I thought I was getting at it, but I see like it's even deeper. And now that I've seen that and walked through that, like there's so much more that I have freedom to do. And like, I can breathe again. It's like, it's so great. To me, it's just really cool because this is my mom, like,
well, it's cool because you are rebuilding that relationship with her from something else.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be possible if she wasn't walking the process as well.
Right.
The process being exactly what you're describing, like questioning those automatic things, just like we're saying, questioning the automatic things in our world as well. Like that's a part of it too, for us to go in there and say, well, just because the world is the way it is, that's just like saying, well, that's just how I used to talk and whatever. It's like, you actually have to catch those things. And the result of doing this process is you start to see those things as they come up and stop them. That's what we experience as parents, is like these points will come up where it's like, you want to say something and it's like your parents said it. And you're like, wait, hold on. I'm about to do to my kid what my parents did to me, but you see it quicker where you can like step in and stop it. That's a result of doing the process, the Destiny process and using your TechnoTutor, just like you were saying, is you see those things more quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously there's a lot more to it than that. But, for example, we were talking about someone earlier who was talking about how they've been using TechnoTutor and within a few months, like they're actually making money and so forth. Things are measurably getting better for them. And they're like, wow, all they've been doing differently is using TechnoTutor, plugging into the systems, walking the process.
And they got mentored by some big names in the past and it did
nothing, right? Because they didn't change their ability until now. They're starting to change their ability to see, oh, when I wanted to go do this, which automatically I would have just done, let me stop. Or when this thing in business came up, I would normally react this way. I'm seeing it now. Okay, stop, don't do that. You can handle higher levels of responsibility because you're taking more responsibility for literally your behavior, your choices, your actions. And this is what we're saying with changing the world outwardly, is when each person takes this point on within themselves, the influence that they have in the world based on the decisions they're making will be different. So the world will change as a result of that.
Ooh,
It doesn't just, yeah, go ahead.
I want to address this point in process because I know a lot of people go through this, and here's the systematic approach of understanding why you will get stuck in process. I feel like I've written about this point so much, and I feel like I'm not getting to the bottom of it for all that. There's two reasons. First reason is you got to physically go out and challenge the point. You have to physically go out and test what else is there. You're not going to solve it inside of yourself because you could see everything and you know everything that's going to happen. You just do it enough where you can go physically. So you do the inner game, then you go do the outer game, and then revisit the point if more stuff comes up. The second thing is you're not educated enough. So as Cameron was talking about, working through the point inside yourself, why you have to do process. The other part of that is education. I know there's a lot of people who use TechnoTutor and write. You need to be doing those, no doubt. If you notice a sticking point within your writing and things like that, is because, well, you now have to develop your understanding of how reality works. That's the whole point of listening to the Bernard audios. That's the whole point of eQuaff. eQuaff is a legendary resource when you're ready for that, because it does take a certain amount of processing ability, right? But it's a legendary resource to getting perspective on what it is that you're holding on to, that's holding you back symbolically, so that you can take it through the writing. Another resource for that is Jinn. The purpose of Jinn is to understand why your thinking is not producing the financial results or the business results that you want in your life. And then you use the tools to change it to what it should be, and removing the points that are keeping you back from that. So if you're experiencing this point of, I just feel like I keep running to the same point. And well, one thing too, is that we'll run into this point of, let's say, being afraid to talk to people, right? And then you'll notice, oh, I'm talking to people more. And then you'll go to make your first live video and you'll be like, oh my God, I can't do it. No, I didn't finish that point. I thought I did it already. You're facing a new level of it, right? And then once you overcome that, guess what? It's going to come up again when you go to do your first public live video. And then it'll come again when you first go to do your first sales presentation or something like that. It's because you're facing new levels of it. Now, if that's not the case, it's because you don't actually understand what's holding you back. That's why we have resources such as Creation's Journey to Life, Heaven's Journey to Life, eQuaff, EQAFE.com, I think .com. Anyway, you can look up eQuaff. And we also have Jinn, where generally speaking, TechnoTutor, Destiny, it's life perfection. And Jinn is financial perfection, which is included in life perfection. And this is why you need both. You need the education along with the tools of integrating information and letting go of old information in order to be successful. It's all of it together. And
it's always about, just real quick.
Go ahead.
Inequality stems from unequal education. So when you study the Jinn material, what you're studying, what you've been given access to, is the way the elite think, the way that they operate. You have to become equal to that. Make sense? That's a part of your education process. If you don't have that within you, in other words, if you're like, for example, well, I think selling is just a bunch of that's not really good stuff. That's manipulation. That's bad stuff. Like you will always be unequal to the elite. You will have no influence. So it's a critical point that you equalize yourself with that point. However, if you stop there, will you be anything different than them? That's why the education then becomes Destiny as well, which goes, so you're not going to learn the Jinn material in Destiny, because the Jinn material is equalizing yourself to the mindset of making money and so forth in the system. but then destiny is equalizing yourself to your mind. You're going to need the destiny material anyways to properly integrate the Jinn material along with Technotutor, because otherwise you'll just be studying it, memorizing it. It'll never become a part of you, and it won't become a part of your living application. Same thing if you only stay within the destiny material and don't master the Jinn material. You'll only stay within the part of, oh, I can process my feelings and emotions and so forth, but I'm never going to stand in a point of having influence in changing the system, because you'll always be just isolated on your own. And this is what the elite understand better than anybody, is how to stand within a group, how to leverage your network. That's how you have influence in this world. And that's why with Self-Perfected, all we've done is just bring all these points together in a clear way where it's like, okay, now I realize all of these are connected. You have to put all these together to stand up and make a difference. It's not, being a part of Self-Perfected isn't about becoming a follower of any of us or Self-Perfected. It's just getting access to an environment where you're like, okay, I see how these connect. And I'm walking with other people who are doing this as well. What do you want to say, Mitch?
So that's what Self-Perfected is in this, is yes, it's a bringing together of all of it, but within the starting point of Self-Perfected, it's a consistent ongoing development. It's like this living system where now we bring in the stuff like the education on what's happening in China, what's happening in politics, what's happening in current events, so that we can take everything from Jinn, take everything from Destiny, take all the stuff we put into Technotutor, everything in DIP, and we bring it to here. So it's a real living, breathing conversation, and then a consistent application every week. Come back together on Friday, come back together on Sunday, do the podcast, and then again and again. And that's
it's like breathing.
That's yeah, exactly. That's how we do
well
it.
Said. That's really well said. Asif, what else did you want to add to those points?
I'll bring up that point later. A really, really powerful point to consider, right? Because you'll get people saying, so what? You're saying the only way to sensibly or commonsensically or to make a difference in this world, or you're saying the only way you can do what is best within making money is by becoming a distributor, doing Technotutor, supporting the growth of equalizing education and bringing things to politics. And I always say, well, what else is there? They never have an answer.
Dude, you could distribute food to everyone in third world countries.
And so there will be people over time that we find as lawyers or people who are already politicians, and they see what we're doing and they're like, yeah, I want to support this. I'll put all my resources to that. But the biggest bottleneck right now is the people, the network. The biggest bottleneck right now is education. We can have all the other points in place. We can have the people running for office and all this stuff, but we don't have enough people. We don't have enough votes. We don't have enough people who understand, oh yeah, communism doesn't make sense. And capitalism, as in terms of the longevity of it, doesn't make sense, because that's what produced all of this. And just because someone's survival is provided for doesn't mean it's communism, right? For those of you listening who saw, I posted a status that was like, what would you do if your survival was guaranteed? And somebody commented and they were like, whoa, I didn't know you were one for communism. I thought you believed in freedom. They're saying that if your survival is provided for, that's not freedom. So I said, oh, communism? I'm surprised that you think this is communism. I didn't think you were one for slavery. Because what they're saying is, no, everyone should have to work for their own survival. That's what freedom is. How is that freedom? If you only have to focus on this one thing until you're able to transcend it, which we know that it's not just a given that you could just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just make so much money that you don't have to work anymore. It's an education point. And education doesn't happen just by listening to the right videos, listening to the right audio material, just reading books. That's the whole point of what we're doing. So his response, it was good. It was cool. It was like, well, anytime I've ever seen that implemented, it always just led to communism. I said, that's fair. It's true, right? Where what we're suggesting never has been implemented before, because everything that we are now is a manifestation of us as individuals, where we all believe that the nature of the human being can't change. And if you ask the average person, which is what I was doing, is asking like, do you believe that racism can be gone forever? They said, no, it's impossible. Racism is always going to happen. There's a reason for that. I find, and tell me if you guys notice this too, but whether it's, David Icke or Alex Jones or this person, that person, this person, that they can all say the problem so clearly, but no one ever gets past. So they're saying the reason why is because of this, which is because of this. And nobody actually says we should change the system.
Right. David
look at
Icke's
the-
solution is just everyone just love each other. We just need to all love.
That's what Zeitgeist was in the last
Right.
8 minutes of the movie. Was like, we've been asleep for a long
Well,
time. but
and
we
what's
must wake up."
fascinating, Mitch, do you know about Venus Project?
I heard Bernard talk a little bit about it.
Venus
but it fell
Project
apart.
started promoting Zeitgeist and Venus Project were like merging into this one point because they were using Venus Project and Jack Fresco, I think his name is, his ideas that we need to get rid of money and then we'll have this like tech, utopia where everything will be run through science and through technology. So, but what we're seeing right now is literally what Zeitgeist was promoting. You see that? Like they were trying to make it, and this is what Bernard said, like what you guys are promoting doesn't make any sense because they were promoting a resource-based economy.
Mhm.
But not everyone has a right to resources. And that's what we're seeing right now with that whole Kamala Harris thing where she was like, we'll give everybody the resources to compete equally. And it's like, yeah, so everybody will have the resources of fucking Facebook.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Each individual person will have the same resources as Mark Zuckerberg. Right. Okay. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, no.
it's a
Just
joke.
sorry. I just meant all the peasants will be equally poor. That's all I meant. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. You'll each get a vaccine. You'll each get, it's like, yeah, okay. That's not, that's a fucking lie.
Yeah. You'll each get $1,000 to survive.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it was just so stupid by the end of the Zeitgeist movie. They just like play some inspiring Carl Sagan clip and then this other guy.
See,
and
but they
then some
don't
other
teach
movie.
people how to change.
Yes,
And I'm not
exactly.
saying they're deliberately hiding it. They didn't know.
Yeah, they don't know. And then there's like some, I don't know, Bill Hicks or some comedian, right? And he's like, has this spiel how he ends his shows. He's like, yeah, well, it's like we're on a ride, right? And it's like life is like a ride, and it's like scary and thrilling and fun and all this stuff. But like, you start to realize it's just a ride. It's just a ride. But I'm like, is this really just a ride? Like is that supposed to somehow like like
So basically, just don't even bother watching this video, and you don't need to know any of this stuff. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like totally backwards. Or like, oh yeah, so
all
it's
it
just a
was doing
ride?
was brainwashing the people who were gonna stand up. It was brainwashing them to not even actually consider real solutions.
Yeah.
That's why Bernard pushed back so hard on it, because
So
it was
great.
literally just directing people into, like, think about it. We already know the tech oligarchy overlord dictatorship is coming. Let's get all these potential activists that we're going to put up a fight and get them into really just accepting it when it comes. And that's all that happened, because it didn't give you any tools of actual self-change. And all these people who were like, could have been activists were like, we need a resource-based economy. Well, what is the resource? You see, it's energy credits. It's all of that. It's literally what they want to implement. We need it just based on a resource, not on money itself, which is what the elite are trying to do with the Great Reset and all that stuff anyways. So it's not a solution, because as we've been saying, if it doesn't require individuals to change and become self-aware, it's not a solution.
And what does that mean? Everything that's not real will fall apart. That's why the system is falling apart, is because it's not actually producing an outcome that doesn't also produce resentment, anger, frustration, inequality, which all comes from inequality. And so any system that we implement that means this person has and this person doesn't, and it's not, this person doesn't have because they've provided more real value and really considered all the consequences of what they're doing. They just have because they had some pre-programming that made them really optimized for business, and they just conquered shit, right? It's like anytime that happens, it will produce consequences. And that is that statement of the only mind worth having is a mind calibrated to do only what is best for all. Because when you actually choose within yourself to do what is best for all, there will be no harmful consequences. Even though what your ego will do, your ego, so advanced. If you're fearful about AI taking over, it took you over a long time ago. AI stands for artificial intelligence. Intelligence meaning it develops itself, and artificial meaning man-made. That's your ego. It was put into you from your environment. And it is always developing. It's anti-fragile. Anybody who Mitchell really brought that word into made it come to fruition.
The vernacular.
Exactly. Anti-fragile, right? Where every single time you throw something at it, it'll eat it up and become stronger. And the point is, that is what's guiding you. And what this process is about finding every point that it's taking some part of you and then manipulating you with it. It's like, that's why you'll hear in past podcasts, I'll explain something and then Cameron will be like, wait, hold on. Let me explain that a little bit more, because I can see that somebody's ego will take this and then manipulate them with it into doing nothing. Right? And that's why we try to be as specific as possible. And that's why you have to use self-honesty. You have to use your self-honesty of what is the consequence that I'm producing with X or Y or Z or whatever it is you're doing. Because if I try to tell you how, you will not understand every single how in existence. That's why we can only go by why, and then up our processing ability to be able to see the consequences of why. An extremely wise man once said, be flexible with your expression and consistent with your principles. And that was Cameron like 5 hours ago when we were texting back and forth. And we were like, holy shit, that sums it up perfectly. When people are like, we're suggesting to do what's best for all. They're like, oh, so you just want everybody to be the same, right? No, because you're talking about expression, right? Who cares if I wear a pink sweater or a black sweater or red sweater, right? It's irrelevant. Preference, okay. But principally speaking, everybody who lives in a place that can get cold, they should have sweaters. That's a principle, right? And even that's not even a principle, really. Even before that is give as you want to receive. That's the principle, where you have to consider. It's a really, really powerful point, because somebody's thinking, how could you possibly figure out the consequences of blah, 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 blah. Cameron, you said a fantastic point on the last call. You said, all you ever have to do is look at the starting point. If anybody ever been skiing before? Yeah. Okay. Or even just walking trails in like a forest or something, right? It's like you can go this way or this way or this way. This is the diamond, this is the double diamond, this way. If you take any start of the trail, it'll take you somewhere else. That's what starting point is. You just start the trail and that will take you somewhere else. So if you check your starting point, what's your starting point? I'm afraid. Okay, that's going to produce consequences that you don't want. What's your starting point? I really want to support this person to see what I see so that we can be equal. So that, because I can see how they're holding themselves back and I want them to prevail past that. Okay. So then do whatever it takes to get that outcome. Because regardless of what it is, if you're actually effective, this is why it's important to up your processing ability so you can actually see the consequences of what you do. If you're actually effective, it will be best. And then our morality will come into play like Cameron's talking about, right? Oh, but it feels wrong. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't care. Joe Biden doesn't care. You know, it's so funny when I posted, I don't know if we probably already mentioned this on the podcast, but the person, Times Person of the Year, right? And it's like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. There's two persons of the year. And then Cameron commented, you know who else were Person of the Year from Time Magazine? Hitler and Stalin or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Like, oh, interesting. It's like they're all kind of like a conspiracy. Like they're working together, right? It's like they're working conjunction. And at the end of the Catherine Austin Fitz video, Project Lockdown, I know we've talked about this already, so I won't go too much into detail.
Planet Lockdown.
What did I say? Project Lockdown? Planet Lockdown. Yeah. Thank you. It's several different pillars or channels that they're working through. And one of them is technology, and one of them is healthcare, and one of them is media, and one of them is finances, and one of them is something. So what they are counting on is that you don't realize that they're all working together. You just keep thinking, oh, this is just a health thing. This has nothing to do with politics. And the politics has nothing to do with money, and money has nothing to do with tech, and tech has nothing to do with, military. That's why the word conspiracy means to work together basically on something, right? That's why anybody who says they're all working together, they're like, no, you're crazy. You see? It's like so perfect, right? They're like, hey, anybody who says that healthcare is related to money, or what she describes is Chairman Powell, one of the chairman of the International Monetary Fund. You could see his face in one of the press conferences, because when there is a question and answer period for in the finance world, or it's for the Federal Reserve. I apologize. I believe it's for the Federal Reserve. But when there's a question and answer period, it's not scripted. So things could get a little, like what's going to happen, right? And so there was somebody who was speaking, and they were bringing up the financial pillar was bringing up a tech pillar. Oh, soon we're going to have digital IDs. And Chairman Powell is in the back like, fuck, don't say that. And what she's saying is because Chairman Powell knows, and it's not literal, but it's the concept, right? Of there's 327 million Americans and over 327 million guns. And this took me time to process about why the fuck do all these Texans want to have guns, and guns are so bad and all this stuff, right? But it's like Jordan Peterson, he talks about this point with men. I don't know if you guys heard this before, but he says with men, there's an underlying threat of violence. So we have a civil way of solving our problems. Have you guys ever heard that before with Jordan Peterson? Yeah, he talks about, it's a very interesting point. It's like, because there's always a threat of physical force, we don't go there. We solve it.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Generally speaking. Depends on the level of education. Thanks,
Unless you're an emotional man.
Unless you're right, a very emotional.
Or if you've been drinking alcohol. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Right? And so the point with that is to consider it's a concept where it's like, so long as the people have guns, the government is like, things could get hairy. But if they don't have guns, we could just go do whatever the fuck we want. Hence Canada, hence Quebec, like you can't go out past 8 o'clock. Why? Because the virus like wakes up after 8 and it's like full moon. Like, doesn't make any sense.
What I was just looking up.
I'm sorry.
No, everybody at the same time, please.
Yeah, let's all okay, right?
Okay.
So I want to say,
no, I was just looking up conspire, right? Because when you said the word conspire, it's like, oh, con together, and then spire, that sounds like breath, and it is. That's like the root of it. It's like, why don't we all breathe together? Like, why don't we all conspire to do what's best?
Right.
Like it doesn't have to be like, even though the definition is of conspiracies or conspires, like, oh, agreeing to do something in secret or whatever, right?
Yeah, we don't have conspiracy theories. We have a conspiracy practicality.
Yeah.
We have a conspiracy application.
We have a conspiracy
there was this
practice.
quote in this book I was that the Hidden Hand book on China, and it said in there it basically was saying that the Chinese really embody this principle from, it was one of the communists like Stalin or somebody, and he said a Soviet communist, where it said ideas are more powerful than weapons. I think he said guns. I think ideas are more powerful than guns. And it said, we don't let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas?
Ooh.
Right. And he said that's their approach to it, right?
Fuck.
But you
That's
notice like now Australia is starting to feel a lot of pressure from China. And remember Australia not too long ago, they confiscated all the guns and everything. So now it's very simple. Now they're doing all the COVID lockdown. It's like extreme there. Think about it. It's way more extreme in the places where the gun control is the highest. You see what I mean? Like Florida, Texas is not as bad as if you go to California and New York. It's really bad there.
Yeah.
The gun control and so forth, right? Also, they have the highest coronavirus death rate, all that bullshit. Right? It's like, that's weird. Right? And then you look at Canada, same thing. Gun control is much more than it is here. And then all of these measures are like it's much easier for them to implement it. Right? And now they're going to do that here in the US too. I'm sure that's part of their whole plan, right? Biden said he wants to take down the NRA. Is that a coincidence that the NRA is moving to Texas now?
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's an important point though, just on Asif, you were talking about starting point and how it's like we got to be clear on that starting point. It's like starting the skiing trail, which absolutely we do. However, this is one of those points where everyone's ego is about to fuck them. And so let me be very clear. About a year ago, when I really started going deep within like DIP and really looking at that and talking with Guion and other basically people here in distributors, right? I'm trying to understand what is my starting point. I was like, oh, my starting point is do what's best for all. Obviously, like I want to, change the money system and all that stuff. And Guion's like, that's not your starting point. Like you got to realize, like you've accepted and allowed all of this ego in the whole world system to basically be downloaded into you as a child and then as an adult, and it's grown and compounded. Right now, that is your starting point. And so, yes, you can have the intention of creating a world that's best for all, but you got to be self-honest. You got to start actually working on yourself. Use your Technotutor every day. Do DIP. Be brutally self-honest with yourself. So then you can work through the points till you can actually say with complete self-honesty and self-trust, my starting point is actually do what's best for all. So I just wanted to be very clear with that, because some people are going to be, okay, starting point's what's best for all. All right, playing video games. You guys figure it out. It's like, no. It's like you got to apply brutal self-honesty within it. But then as you do that, and as you find other people and you create real agreements with each other, that is then like, that's how you basically prove your starting point is real. And then over time, as you do this process and things develop, it's like, I actually prove to myself my starting point is what's best. That's gnarly.
The number one limiting point that will cause you to never realize what Mitch just said, to allow you to just goof yourself over and over again and be dishonest and then wonder why things aren't working and not be sure and be like, this process doesn't work, or anything like that. It's because you're not participating in the group.
Exactly what I was going to say. Exactly.
Yep.
Self-isolation.
You think you can do it on your own?
Self-isolation.
Doing it on your own. And also the reason you don't participate in the group is you don't want to give up that right to be abusive, be self-interested. You don't want to be challenged. You're afraid of that. You're afraid of changing. And then what I inevitably see from those people who isolate themselves like that is that they end up just justifying, the group is just trying to control me and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Look at the world right now. Step out your fucking front door without a mask on. Try to go to the grocery store without a mask on. And you're trying to tell me we're trying to control people. We're not trying to control anybody. We're saying get control of yourself. Change yourself. Participating in the group is not mandatory. It's voluntary.
It's a point of support.
It's a point of support. It's like if you really want to improve and get better and have better things in your life and improve this world, you can't do it in isolation because you don't know what the fuck to do. And it's not about someone else is going to tell you what to do. You're going to get a lot of cross-referencing. Like, let's say you want to do something, or you see some point or some decision point or whatever it is, or some reaction you're having to something. You bring it to other people and you ask them. They can be more objective. It doesn't mean that what they tell you is the gospel truth and you must do what they say. It's consider the fact that they're not attached to what they're not emotionally invested in whatever it is you're talking about. So they can offer an outside perspective. And you have to also look at them and say, is that a person that I see is changing and growing? And that's somebody that I would listen to. Doesn't mean if somebody's not, you can't listen to them. In fact, that would be a great thing to do is go look at somebody who you see is changing, get their perspective on your situation. Go talk to somebody who you can see is fucking around and get their perspective. Because if you're agreeing with that person,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to see that for yourself. It's not about force. But it's like, would you rather, okay, like let's say you can see that the path somebody is on or the choice they're making or whatever it is going to lead to them abusing themselves and other people. Would you want to live with the consequence of letting them do that and then knowing that you didn't say anything?
It's like here in the States, and I'm sure in most, developed countries, if a mother is found to be doing drugs or dealing drugs or, like anything like that, if she's breaking the law in any way, she gets taken away from her child.
Yeah.
They don't care that, oh, that's my baby, you can't take him away. Like, they don't give a fuck. You're being abusive. You get separated. You get removed from that, right? And that's like a physical thing that happens versus somebody just telling you like, hey, you got to stop doing that. You got to stop doing that, right? And that would actually be supporting, either way, it's supporting that person to realize I cannot continue doing this activity and believing that it's best or believing that it's going to have a positive effect. Like, clearly that doesn't work. But there are people who are in those situations all the time, meaning many times people cannot see it for themselves. They need somebody to step in and let them know. Not that they can't see it for themselves, is that they're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you say not seeing it?
They're not seeing it. I'm not gonna do that.
No, the algorithm's got us. And so,
just to be clear, algorithm, we said not seeing it. We're not suggesting for people to go not seeing anything.
And so that
I'm not
point
seeing
with,
every weekend.
every Sunday, we as individuals, okay, if you try to take on your ego by yourself, you're gonna get slapped. It's gonna make you bow down and eat the ego's ass, metaphorically. I think that's funny.
And in reality.
You don't think it's funny, whatever. But my point
like to eat
what would
shit.
you say though to somebody who's like, because I know lots of people will have this objection. So it's like you're gonna have to get through it for yourself, right? But you can hear other people's perspective. But what would you say to somebody who's like, you just want me to join this group so you can control me and so you can have power over me and tell me what to do, and you don't really care about what changing this world?
You want to hear something funny? When my life really started becoming great is when I stopped accepting what my thoughts were feeding me and just started listening to my friends who cared. Mitchell, Cameron, Drake, Kian. I was like, why do I always fight them when the only thing they fucking care about is helping me walk through my bullshit? All right. To the person who really wants to hold on to that, good luck.
Bye-bye.
Go through. And I'm not being like, fuck you. Like, I'm just saying, good luck. Seriously. Go whatever you need to go through to realize that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Okay. Because it's cool in our clubhouse. We had a clubhouse yesterday. And the point that we're all acknowledging is, when we get frustrated that people don't get it, like, come on, you don't get it. Like, why don't you get it? Right. It's like you walked this process in order to get it. So don't expect somebody to just get it without walking this process, right? If you think that you're special and you already knew this stuff, all that stuff, remember who you were before you started this process. You were probably just like me, a piece of shit who didn't have what they want, didn't have any certainty about what reality was or what you should be doing with your life or anything. Okay. So if you have to go through that point to face the consequences of just following whatever you think and whatever you think is cool and right and all that stuff, sure, no problem.
Here's another point then. Oh, go
but
ahead.
really quick to finish that.
Yeah.
If you want to save time, put your bullshit aside and consider why would we suggest that having an environment that supports you to understand yourself would make sense for you? Because no one's saying this is what you must do. We're saying if you follow a set of principles, such as let me control you. No, sorry, that's not the principle. It's called being self-honest. Why wouldn't that help you? If you're afraid of being controlled, that tells me you don't trust your ability to think for yourself. Right? And for those of you who are new to having to face people calling you like you're part of a cult and all that stuff, if someone's afraid of being in a cult, what are they afraid of? They're afraid of being convinced to do something that's not in their own interest, that might harm them themselves, right? And Cameron's mentioned this before. It's like that person knows that they cannot think for themselves. They really need your support. Because I was really almost deathly afraid of that. Right? When I first found out about all this stuff, I was like, I saw somebody call this a cult and I was using TechnoTutor. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I got brainwashed. Oh my God, I can't talk to anybody anymore. And I was like living in a basement with my brother and this is how my hair looked all the time. And like, it was just both of us fucked up and depressed and being like, oh shit, dude, like, I don't know what to do anymore. No one's telling me to do anything. No one's touching me. No one's even close to me from this call, right? And then I just remember just going through that and being like, holy shit, dude, I'm retarded. But let me say one more thing, okay? The reason why the fear was so powerful in me, because it's not for everybody. Like that point doesn't manifest like that for everybody, right? And everybody's like, will have that question of like, why is people calling this? Oh, okay, right. Anybody who's been in Jinn, it's like Jinn's a cult, KT's evil, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like clearly that KT is really like, it's because he's exposing things, right? So the point for me to reflect on was my parents lived in basically a third world country where, you know, my mom's mom was a prostitute and she found her mom washed up. They found her mom washed up in a river dead. And her brothers like drank poison and set themselves on fire. There's a lot of fear there. And because that was all put into me, the moment my environment says uncertainty, I would freak the fuck out. What this process, me using it on myself, nobody controlling me, supported me to do is, oh, just remove all the points of fear and learn to trust myself and investigate things for myself. So if you experience that fear point of, holy shit, if I, this thing is really fucking scary to me, or, you know, what if I don't wear a mask and people like really get really angry with me? It's probably just equal to the amount of oppression that you face as a child, the amount of like physical control that you experienced as a child. So that's something to look at for yourself, right? Cameron, were you gonna say something? You remember it?
Well, I want to add something too, which is I've seen this happen before multiple times where okay, look at for example what happened to Kevin Trudeau. He went into the elite, they supported him, he became effective, and then he was like, you know what, this isn't best, I'm out of here. And then they fucking put him in prison, right? It works in reverse too. People will come into this group, they'll start growing, they'll start changing because they're pushing through their points, they're doing the process, things will improve for them. And we don't do anything, but they will not want to push further because they don't want to take that next level of responsibility. And then simply because we're saying you have a responsibility to stand up more, we're not forcing you to do it, but we're going to, if we see something as a limitation that you're accepting, right? Like, let's say somebody says to me, oh, you know, like I'm improving, I've got a relationship now, I'm making more money, I'm doing all these things. And I'm saying, well, then you have a responsibility to stand up even further in this world. But to do that, you're going to have to push past this belief that you have about yourself, that, you know, because you have this fear of, let's say, talking to people and really challenging maybe their beliefs, like their conflict, or going into that conflict of challenging their belief. You're going to have to walk into that and do it. Otherwise, you're allowing weakness within yourself. They'll say, perhaps, you're just trying to control me, right? You're just trying to manipulate me into something. So I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. But all it was is that they faced that next level of, now I've got what I wanted at this level. Now I have to go through this growth process again.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like you're starting all over again. Every time you face that next firewall, it feels like, oh, I'm totally lost. I'm unstable. I don't know what I'm doing. But it's like, yeah, but look at everything else that is going well in your life.
Yeah.
You are at another point, but now it's like you have to walk through the fire again and go to the next level of responsibility. And when someone's not willing to do that, the ego will take even more control than before. So you have to understand, as you're walking this process, I'm not trying to create fear in you, but you have to understand this. Your ego, this system within you, wants you to feel good so it can take away from you whatever it is you're feeling good about. So that way you'll fall and you won't stand up and make a difference. Just be aware of that. So for myself, when I get to another level of, hey, things are going really well, and I feel that great feeling about it, I'm like, cool, I feel good. I'm not trying to hold on to it. I'm not worried about losing anything. What's the next thing I can do? How can I take more responsibility? Because if I'm feeling good, I'm going to feel bad. It's just the way polarity works. So for myself, what I've learned to do, and I've got a lot of support from other people in this group, is to, rather than try to go to these high extremes of high, just allow myself to feel good. Do things that are normal. What are some things that make you feel good? Having sex, eating good food, spending time with people that you enjoy, talking, having fun, things like that. You know what I mean? Like, just things that are very basic that will make you feel good. And it's like, what do the elite do, man? They go fucking like have weird, crazy hooker coke parties where they like rape people and shit. And you're like, dude, whoa, slow down. Like,
it's too much.
Just have sex with your wife. Like, you know, you guys want to do some kinky stuff over there? Fine, do it. Right. But you don't need to go do all this crazy shit. You know what I mean? Like, find a way to express it in a way that's balanced. And so then the negatives aren't as bad, because when you go through positive, you're going to go, it's like, that's going to happen because we're still have a system that's based on energy. You can't change that. You see, your body needs physical energy, so there's always going to be a little good and a little bad within this point, but that you don't need to use that to justify, well, there's always going to be evil people in the world. No, that's something that you're accepting, and you're judging the point. You're judging where you're at. You're judging what reality is, and you're using that to justify why you can't change the system. You see what I mean? So within the system that we're in, realize you're going to have to use money. There's some bad things that come along with that, but develop yourself to be able to get to a point where you can use it for what's best. Do you see the difference? It's about your starting point within what you're doing. So when you go into that point of things are going well, don't try to hold on to it, because when you're building a structure within yourself based on principles, you don't need to fear losing something. It's when it's based on energy that the fear is very real. It's like when you're in a relationship with someone and it's totally just based on energy and self-interest, you suddenly become very like hyper critical of them, hyper vigilant. You know, it's like that Kanye song RoboCop, right? It's like, you're like, always, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? Why are you doing that? What are you doing? You know, are you talking to somebody else? Like, because you're like, I don't want to lose that energy because it's not real. It's not based on a real structure. I'm not worried about losing anything with my wife. Like, she's going to like not like me anymore. I don't care if she likes me. Sometimes she doesn't like me. Sometimes I don't like her. But you know when the times that we really don't like each other the most? It's when we're just defending our self-interest. It's when they're saying something and we know it's true. I'm being self-interested here. I have to let that go.
Right.
You know, and then when you let it go and you do what you need to do, you walk the process and you're like, you respect that person more.
Yeah.
And you respect yourself more, and and you go to another level of self-responsibility, and you actually together are more unified and you can create more.
Yeah.
I was pointing at something more, guys. Just want to make sure.
The algorithm.
We got to be so careful with this fucking algorithm, man. It's like I never know, right?
You said
I'm like, if I'm like
fucking.
scratching
Ah.
my nose, I don't want to think I'm doing something, But my point is, it's like, let go of the fear of someone's trying to control you, because by operating within that starting point, we are creating a world where we are going to be more and more and more controlled, because we're not supporting other people to wake up and take more self-responsibility. So what choice do the elite have but to control everybody, because you can't trust everyone? It's like we're creating that by justifying our own weakness, our own limitations, and by not supporting other people. And the reality is, if you are not able to stand in someone's face and tell them, buddy, you're fucked right now. You're accepting a whole bunch of limitation. You need to stop. Here's the tools. If you're not, I'm not saying that's the best way in every case to talk to somebody and to get through to them, but in some cases, it may be what they need to hear. And if you're not willing to do that, like, is that going to be an excuse for when you're living in 2030 and you own nothing and you have no privacy, but life couldn't be better? Like, really? You want to get to that point where you're like, oh, fuck, all I can do is sit here and watch the fucking shit that Netflix is saying I'm allowed to watch based on what I'm going to buy. And literally I can't even control what I'm able to see or do. I can't walk out of my house because the fucking Amazon doorbell won't unlock my fucking doors. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Do you want to go there?
It's cool that you brought this point back up, because I did want to say this. Like, when you were talking about having, when you're doing what's best, you have to be willing to face more conflict, right? When you're actually walking these principles. And that's what I saw in relation to, like, my mother, for example. There was more conflict there, that because I brought that up, but I was bringing that up not with the intention of, like, I just want to have conflict with my mother. Like, if you know me, I don't like conflict, right? But I was willing to do that because I could see, like, the benefit that it had for not just myself, but for her as well. I could see that already of what it would bring her. And then when we were having the conversations later, now I'm actually living that benefit. She's living that benefit, and we're all benefiting from it, right? But there was initially a point of great conflict at first. And it's not just with my mom, it's like with other people as well, But the point is, it's not because you're a bad person or you're going into it because you want to bring up conflict, but rather because, hey, this is what's best. And if that means we have to walk through conflict to get there, okay, that's okay. Because the conflict is just coming from them defending their ego.
It's temporary.
Right.
The basic points that you can always look back to is just check yourself. Are you going into isolation? Are you trying to separate yourself? Are you trying to do it alone? Those are all ego points.
Also, another one. Did you stop doing your Technotutor every day?
Right.
I see it time and time again. The person's like, oh, well, this and this, and they're trying to justify all this stuff. And you're like, are you still using your Technotutor? Like, I'm not using it. That's what got you there.
I had to go through
people that. They go to a level of success. They stop doing the thing that got them there.
Yeah.
Because they think they've got it now. That's fucking ego.
Yeah. I had to go through a couple of rounds of that back in the day. And I was like, oh, fuck. I'm like, after I did it once, I did it twice, I did it three. I was like, okay, fuck, I got to stop going through those cycles. Right. And so every single time that I gave into some big ass fear that was given to me from other people and all this stuff, it's like I try to isolate myself from the group, try to dodge the group calls, or, like stop reaching out to people, all that stuff, and then stop doing the writing, stop doing my, at the time, DIP Lite, stop doing Technotutor, all that stuff. You will fall off the things that you know for a fact is what gave you stability, is what gave you a level of understanding and awareness that you didn't think you could have. But your ego will be like, nah, don't do it. Those are the things they're trying to control you, whatever it is. So you just have to look at simple, like some examples of how, whether you can spot whether it's ego or it actually makes sense, where there's nobody that I avoid. Nobody. Right? Any point in me that's like, oh, run away from this person, that's ego. Because I know that this process is the answer. So if there's somebody who's very contrarian or who's talking shit or whatever, I'm not afraid. I used to be. Right? Because I was like, oh, it's not worth it. Like, what if this person gets mad? All that stuff. That's ego. Right? If you're giving into that point, well, I don't want to force people to, don't force. You can't force anybody to do anything. It'll never work. But I'm not afraid, because I know if anybody can help the person in front of me, it's me. If anybody can help the person that's in front of me, it's me. And I'm not going to be the one to help them. I'm going to guide them to the tools.
There's a point in there that I just want to bring up, because I know people listening to this are going to be like, oh, that's so arrogant. That's your ego. You think that you can help the person in front of you. It's not like that. It's like, if it's my responsibility, because you're in front of me, it's my responsibility to help.
Hold on. And also you're supporting them by saying, hey, you have this issue, I'm trying to point it out to you. And they're like, you're arrogant, you're this or that. How dare you try to correct me? It's like, you're doing that to me right now.
Yeah.
So you're not willing to actually live what you're saying. You're just defending yourself. That's all that's happening. Like, because people will start calling you names and start doing all kinds of things. And you're like, wait, I thought you were saying the reason I'm bad is because I was making you feel bad. But you're literally trying to do that to me right now. The difference is it doesn't work on me. I was like, I don't care about that aspect. I know how to breathe and forgive myself. So whatever you're doing to try to manipulate me is not going to work. You're just manipulating yourself. That's all it is.
If you stay steadfast in principle, you will always create the best result. And when you don't, just consider your application. That's why we need to be part of a group. It's like, hey, Cameron, hey, Drake, hey, Mitch, I tried this thing in this specific scenario and it didn't work. I didn't understand. He'll be like, okay, well, tell me about what went on. I'm like, all right, Mitch, well, they came up to me and they said, don't do this. And I said, well, this. And then Mitch will be like, well, what was your starting point in saying that? Oh, I just wanted to be right. Okay. I'll go check myself. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. All right, bye. Phone calls 10 minutes. We couldn't do that initially because I didn't have the awareness, right? And, sometimes we're all, especially Cameron, right? Because we did learn a lot from Cameron, each of us individually. It's like, he'll push points in us that we're not willing to let go of. And we'll try to fight back a bit, right? Well, even within us, we'll be like, fuck, there's no way, fuck that guy. Like, he doesn't know, right? But just like Cameron said, in your relationship, right? With you and Katie, me and Maylat, right? All of our individual relationships, even with friends, right? It's like that point when you're fighting with the other person, it's because I'm holding on to wanting to be right or my point of self-interest, and so are you. And afterwards, we're like, man, I'm glad you put up a little battle right there. I'm glad you didn't just let it go. Okay, no problem, fine. Because I see that I would have continued with that and then caused problems for my damn self. Right. Yeah. And so understanding that, it's like, because we've built a real relationship that's based off, wow, Drake, Mitchell, Cameron, Kian, all other people in the group, it's like, you guys have proven you really do have my best interest in mind. Okay, so I can
even within that, I just want to add something real quick to that, just so there's no misinterpretation. Even within that, you shouldn't trust me. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't trust Drake. You shouldn't. It's not about these. You should mistrust. Like you're trying to like, oh, are they really trying? Right, it's right. Like you don't have to trust another person. You just trust yourself. So if you feel like someone's trying to control you, take that back to yourself and being like, first of all, where am I trying to control? Mm-hmm. Where am I just trying to control the other person's expression so I don't have to face something? Like you guys will never hear me tell you you're making me feel bad by saying that.
That's right.
If you say something and I feel bad, I go, I am accepting something weak. Yeah. I need to grow. Like, what is it? It may not have anything to do with what you're talking about. It may not be what you're saying is correct. It may be there's something else that I need to look at. So I don't go, whatever you said is the truth, therefore I'm just going to change. That's not taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. Now I need to figure it out. That's why we have the destiny process and the tools like TechnoTutor. So you can access those points. So you can understand how to access them, where to figure it out. Because half the time when somebody has no fucking clue about any of this stuff, what they thinking is important is just like they're justifying so many layers of bullshit. Like Drake was telling me a story about someone he was talking to earlier. Won't go into detail, but it's like what you're focusing on is like, why are you accepting that? And they're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was accepting something. Wow. They just took it for granted.
Yeah.
You know, like just as an example, like, oh, I'm doing that because I just, you know, I have to compete to survive, right? Like, okay, so are you just taking that for granted that you just need to compete to survive? Like, oh yeah, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's we're all taking that fucking for granted. We don't have a system that allows for anything else. Doesn't mean we shouldn't worry about our survival, not worry about it. It's not, doesn't mean we should just like ignore our survival, but to realize how much of things that we are doing is influenced by that. So let's not justify other things can't change because I have to survive.
And I have a really great story on what Cameron just specified more. But Drake, did you want to say something before? Okay. It was actually, this is a story. I never told you guys this, but this was with Avery. So Avery Williams, one of the co-founders of TechnoTutor, right? This was when I was super fucked up in Australia. I had just made $30,000, more money I ever made in a month in my life at that time. And I remember realizing, I'm like, fuck, I've been making up this bullshit in my head of, I just want to get rich and then I'll make a difference. And then when I realized that, I was like, oh fuck, like I need to stop doing that. And what I could see was, it is very clear to me off of like two or so years of like consistent research and consideration and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, the biggest problems in this world come back to education, and we need to solve that first so that we can move forward. I remember talking to Avery, and this is to accent the point of, oh, I'll tell you after, but it's like, I was like, Avery, I finally realized, you know, like I got to become a distributor. And what do you think Avery said?
Duh.
No, he didn't say that.
What do you say?
He was like, no, you got to stay. I was like, what the fuck? And I was going through all this stuff. I'm like, Avery doesn't give a fuck about anybody. He just wants to sell people stuff, all this stuff, right? All this, there's so much judgment towards everything, right? And I just like let go of those points. I'm like, damn, like Avery has had the most integrity I've ever seen in my life out of any individual. Same thing with Cameron, right? And I'm telling him, I'm like, I'm ready to come back and be a distributor. He's like, okay, don't do that. You got to stay. I cannot tell you how fucking confused I was. I was like, Avery, what are you talking about? And he's like, you're going to stay there and you're going to make so much money. He's like, you have to stay there and then prove that like, you know, he's bringing up particular points, right? And I can't tell you how fucked up. I remember I was at a hostel in the center of Melbourne or Melbourne.
So hold on, just for context, I want you to finish that, but just for context, he was telling you stay there and make money for yourself and live your life there rather than going and working, essentially working with him, which would, from the context of why this is impactful, would make Avery more money if you came back.
Exactly.
Versus it makes him nothing if you stay there.
Right.
So I just want to give that context.
Yeah. Avery, I'm going to come work, not for you, but I'm going to
with TechnoTutor. But the point is that would benefit him. So you would think, of course, he's going to persuade you to go do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Like you just want my money, right? Like,
right.
And then he was like, no, he's like, stay there for some time, make money, like really make a lot of money. Right. I was like, I can't, like the cognitive dissonance I experienced in that moment. I was like torn apart inside. I was literally saying, Avery, what the fuck, man? I was like angry at him. Cause I was like, finally he'll be like, nice, like, great. Like, come on back. Right. And I was like so fucked up at that point. And I was like, Avery, what do you mean? So I remember getting off the phone with him, sitting on the curb, beautiful summer day, right? Australia every fucking day, right? I'm sitting on the curb and just like, I'm beside myself. I literally just yelled like, what the fuck? And then he's like, go. And I'm like, okay. I need to get off the phone. All right, take care, Avery. I hang up. And there is so many things running through my head. I didn't know what to think. But what's one thing that we know? What can you always go back to? The process. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to my techno tutor. I'm going to put everything that I'm thinking, all of it, all of it, right? Even the stuff I wouldn't want to say out loud, right? I put all of it into techno tutor, all of it. Okay. Takes about 15, 20 minutes, even that. Stabilize. I'm like, okay. All right, let me write about it. Okay. I got out pencil and paper. I was like, pros, cons, like just writing things out. Felt no more emotion. I was like, I'm clear. Avery was wrong. I know for a fact what I'm supposed to do. And I'm bringing up this point because of what I was mentioning and what Cameron mentioned. It's like, at the end of the day, you listen to yourself, but you have to have the processing ability. You have to have the self-trust. You have to have developed that. It's not just something you say, okay, I'm going to start listening to myself. Oh, okay, feel good now. Okay, cool. All right.
Because most people aren't actually listening to themselves.
Exactly.
They think they are, but they're just listening to something
You're
else.
using your emotional guidance system that your feelings were fucking given to you when you were a child, and you have no idea where they came from. You say, I'll go follow that because that's myself. No, it's not. Right. So it's a process of developing that.
Hold on, just real quick. Who are you really? You are really life. That's who you really are. Life operates on these 13 principles. So if you're actually listening to yourself as who you really are, you would be walking with these principles. I just want to make that clear. So when people say, I'm listening to myself. No, you're listening to your ego. That's not who you really are.
Right.
Unless you're doing what's best for all, you're not listening to yourself. That's not, because who you are is life. How the fuck do you think you got here? Like, think about it. You're not here of your own creation based on who you believe you are in this world. Who you believe you are in this world is something that was manufactured from the moment you were born here.
That's the AI.
So what's the part that's actually allowing you to be here in the first place? That's who you really are.
Mm-hmm. And it was my realization of, oh, and I was like confused because I was like, I wasn't fully a self-leader just yet, right? So I was like, why is what the conclusion that I'm drawing different from what my mentor, Avery, was drawing? And I was like, no, this is the process. This is the process of having self-honesty, developing self-trust. And so I called him back. Must have been 40 minutes to process this entire situation, the most cognitively dissonant part of like probably that entire year. It took me 40 minutes to process. I'm telling you, man, like it's actually crazy that you can use this to clarify, stabilize, and make decisions, right? So 40 minutes, I call him back. Hey, Avery, it's me again. Right? Hey, what's up? Avery's always so jolly, right? I say, Avery, I went through my process. I did techno tutor. I wrote about it, and I'm coming back. You're wrong. I'm coming back. And what does Avery try to do? Nothing. He said, okay, you're clear. I'm like, was this like a test or something? He's like, no. It wasn't some kind of like superpowered test. He's just, you're clear. I can see that you're clear. You're certain. He said, okay. That was the end of it. That is what is a result of doing this process. I'm not special. The reason why I always say I'm not special is because it's only a result of considering principle in a process of working through yourself. And the result of it was, holy shit, I made a decision for myself. Right? All throughout my life, it was like, go to university. Okay, I don't want to. I'm not going to finish it, but I'll do it. Do this. Okay, sure, no problem. I hate door-to-door, but I'll do it. And it's like, those are all from people I had no respect for, and I would still follow along. Imagine the person I had the most respect for. I've come to develop that respect through him constantly standing up, showing me my bullshit time and time again. And I would be very spiteful towards Avery and Cameron in the past. But the fact that we're we have fantastic relationships. It's proof of their forgiveness. I remember one time being on the phone and crying and be like, Avery, I am so sorry for the way I've treated you over the last 3 years. And he said, no problem. I was like, I don't get it. He said, Asif, it's all of us or none of us. Right. I was like, thank you. I won't go into all the emotion of it. Because what I was seeing is he's like, don't worry about it, right? You don't have to go into all the emotion of it. Just take this as a principle. It's all of us or none of us. Okay. Keep moving forward. So with that point, I realized, oh, it's not about just trusting in something outside of yourself. It's also not about just listening to yourself. It's investigating all and then keeping what is good. And the process of working through where you're dishonest with yourself, where you're fearful, is so that you can look at everything more objectively. And then the process of using TechnoTutor is developing your ability to see the consequences of everything so that you can see things objectively. And you can see what's the first order consequence, what happens if you do this thing, and what happens if you do this, what is the result of if you do this thing, and what's the result of that? What's the ripple effect? That's the second and third order and fourth order consequences. Me being able to see that for myself and seeing that this was part of just using the process consistently and trusting myself blew my fucking mind. And let that be the indicator that Avery doesn't care to control anybody. He wants me to see clearly for myself so that I can support other people to see clearly for themselves. That's why there are many people who just use TechnoTutor and use their process to have a better relationship and support their children and just really become best in that, because they're already, at a certain point in their life where they have a lot that they have to stabilize within, where it's like their kids are already growing up and it's causing a lot of issues. And then they use TechnoTutor to rebuild the foundation of their relationships. Rather than being like, screw you, like everyone's in for their own self-interest, that starts falling away and they start making decisions as a group, right? They start kind of coordinating a little bit more, maybe spending a little more time together, all that stuff. And we're seeing father and daughter relationships being rebuilt, right? Mother and son, right? And Drake knows what I'm talking about, right? It's like, can you talk about that for just briefly? Bruce and Ella, you guys had a really cool interview.
So yeah, I guess in order to see this interview, you have to have TechnoTutor, right? Because it's really personal, right?
Okay, right.
But it's a really, really awesome experience that I got to witness. Was Ella, his 11-year-old daughter, Bruce's 11-year-old daughter, being very articulate and very aware of what their experience was and what their home life was. And it's interesting because there are so many things that I think as people in society or as parents or whatever in general, we just take things for granted. This is just the way that life is, this is what people experience. This is how it goes, that kind of thing. And with them in particular, they got TechnoTutor, they became distributors, they got support from all of us, right? And they started taking on these principles themselves, and they started writing and doing the whole process. And the really fascinating thing was within a very short period of time, they've completely changed their home dynamic. But specifically what we were talking about on this interview was Ella was sharing that she was afraid of getting sick on a long road trip with her dad. And it wasn't just the fear of getting sick, but also the fear of like possibly getting sick without her mother being there. because again, one of these things we take for granted. It's like mom is usually the one who's like with the soup and everything, right? But the cool thing was that Bruce was able to support her within that. And part of the reason why, they, mom was usually taking care of is because for most of Bruce's career, he would have to go other places in order to bring in the money, which is part of like what's wrong with the system, right? Is that like, okay, you have to go over here for a week or a month at a time or whatever the case is, and be completely separated from your family, right? And that's obviously one of these things that we're talking about is like, that's not best, but that's what the system requires for some people, right? And it was just so cool to see what they had experienced together. Was Bruce was able to be there to support his daughter, right? And she was able to get support from that. And she was saying on that interview, she was saying like, wow, like I was able to like get closer to my dad. And he was saying this was like a real bonding experience. And in reality, it completely changed their whole family dynamic. Again, I'm not going to get into like specifics, but she said specifically, she said, I could trust my dad more. Right. And this is an 11-year-old saying this, right? And she's just speaking candidly. And the really cool thing about that is sometimes we don't think that, oh, you're 11, you're not paying attention to this. Like you just do what I say, or you'll get it when you're older or whatever the case is. But here she is being very aware, being very cognizant, and also seeing what the benefit of having pushed through this point that was a fear for her and her dad helping her walk through that. Now she's able to trust her father more. Like, isn't that the experience that we all want for our families? That we want to feel like I can trust you. Like you do have my best interest in mind. Like that it's not just that feeling of like that warm, fuzzy feeling of like love. It's that feeling of like, you care about me. I can trust you. Yes, okay. I can bring things to you when I have fears. And I know that even if you push me or challenge me, that we've done this in the past and it worked. It was in my best interest and it really helped, And just seeing that, like, wow, okay, that was something really cool coming from the child's perspective, right?
It's things like that when you'll see that story, and talk to Bruce after, and all of us individually, even you and your mother, right? It's like we've all had this of I didn't think that was possible. When you operate from a different starting point, in other words, starting point of principles, you will start to see that there's a lot more possible than you think. And that's what we're suggesting with this world. If you can't see it, that just shows that you haven't done this process long enough. Because if you really start changing the nature of who you are and what you value and what's important to you and the nature of what you're focused on, and you really start considering the people around you, the world around you, you will see that this world can change. No doubt. So the point is, Cameron made a good point. If you're not committed to the daily application of writing and using TechnoTutor, then that would be the first reason to look at why you're not getting the results that you want in your life. And then the next thing to look at is education. Education is always the solution. And dive into the Jinn material, dive into the Destiny material, Creation's Journey to Life, Heaven's Journey to Life, Bernard's audios on YouTube, Equaf, Your Wish is Your Command. If you're not part of Jinn, join Jinn. The information in that in order to be successful within the system is integral. But check out the principles. Go to self-perfected.com, check out the free resources section, and you'll see DIP Lite. You'll see the writing course that allows you to really understand, right? Go back and listen to the other podcast episodes, because the purpose of why we're doing this is so you can you can get all the points that we've realized over a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You can get it through this. You can get it through getting the book, Unlock Fort Knox to an Abundant Life. Cameron and Avery put that together, where all the points that me, Drake, Mitchell have picked up throughout certain calls and all this, they put it into a book so that you can get it. Just reach out to Mitchell, reach out to Drake, reach out to me, and the distributors are the ones who supply the books. So all of these points all together, when you put them together, it's the education that you need along with the tools of integrating information. You put those together and letting go of the information that you're running now, that will allow you to see that you can actually make a difference in this world. Things don't have to go off the deep end and everything go to shit. But it's up to us as individuals to come together as a group and take responsibility for all this. So if you're not part of the Facebook group yet, go to Facebook, search self-perfected. You can also just go to the website, self-perfected.com, and you'll see all the links to everything there. But other than that, anybody else have anything?
I just have one last thing to add. What else was really cool about talking to that 11-year-old about her process? She said when she first started her process, she saw that she was really resistant to it. She didn't want to do it every day. And I asked her, what made you resistant to it? And she said she could see herself changing. She could see herself changing, and she was afraid. She wanted to hold on to what she already was familiar with. But then she said, after having had some changes and realizing like that it was actually for the better, she realized like, oh no, this is actually a good thing. She actually preferred it. And now she's like encouraging other people, like, you need to do this too. You need this, because it's going to help you change for the better. It's going to help you in your situation. And so if you find yourself being resistant, consider what this 11-year-old's saying. What are you resisting? Are you resisting change because you want to hold on to your ego? Or are you ready to take a step, take that change, and see how much better it really could be?
Shout out Ella.
One
Oh,
final
Cameron,
point on that. One final point on that.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Okay, the way that the ego works is I've been going through DIP, and I myself have faced a lot of resistances and grown a ton over the past year and a half doing this. It's not just like, oh, I feel resistance, so okay, I'll just give into it today, but like tomorrow I'll get back in at it or whatever. It's like, no, your ego knows you better than you know yourself right now. And if you give in to that resistance, it gets stronger than it's ever been, and it will be harder to move. So that next time you give into that resistance, don't judge yourself, don't freak out, don't go into the emotion, just breathe, forgive yourself, and keep moving. Because if you don't, your ego will come back harder than ever, and you will be more fucked than ever. So pay attention to that next time you feel that resistance, and just breathe and just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.
Cameron, did you have, that's an epic point, Mitch.
It's a very important point.
Yeah. Cameron, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say change is not bad. It might seem scary, but it's really not. Things only get better when you change, if you change within the principles that are best. So one more thing, because you guys had a last thing, so I get another last thing. I am going through a major point of change myself. So hopefully, depending on how shipping works, next time you see the podcast, I will have one of those self-perfected hats. So, and I have to, I don't know what's going on here. I have to pay for them myself. So yes, I spent over $100 on hats today. All right. So I buy the hats. So if you see me wearing a hat or a shirt, I bought it. All right. So no excuses. But that's used to support the growth of the Facebook group. All right. So you guys are doing an amazing job within all of that. I kind of stay in the background a little bit because I'm more focused on TechnoTutor kind of general stuff over here. But I do obviously do the podcast and everything. So I wanted to have one of those hats because I've always got these ones. But I got one of the ones like Drake, and then I got one of the Team Life ones. So
Nice.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really was looking forward to that one. So I saw it on the shop. So
They're really, really high quality. You're gonna love them.
yeah.
I got some like it was a couple of weeks ago, and I got a toque, and like
What's a toque?
you know what a toque
The
is?
fuck is
Like
a
a
toque?
winter hat, a cuffed
A beanie?
a beanie. Yeah.
Oh, the fuck did
Why
you call
didn't
it?
you just say beanie?
Well, I mean, at the same time, we got to use our TechnoTutor on that word too.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm accepting some limitation myself, but
Yes.
not adapting that word. Okay.
I never heard it called that before, but maybe it's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, 100% a Canadian thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely spelled with like as if it's a French word. I learned it as
Ah.
English, but I'm pretty sure it's a French word.
Oh,
But yeah,
nice.
it's really, really, really high quality stuff. So you'll really like
Very
it.
cool.
I'm excited to see it. I know Katie is asking for one. Did you get her one?
Well, I got two hats, so we can kind of interchange them.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day is coming up.
I'll get her more if she wants another one. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool.
There you
Yeah.
go.
All right.
All right.
Till next time, everybody.
Peace.
See ya.